Yep.
Okay, we'll declare the meeting open and begin with karakia. Tue ki runga, tue ki raro, tue ki waho, tue ki roto, tue ki te here tangata, ka rongo te pō, ka rongo te au, haumie, huie, tae ki e. Thanks, everyone. It's an absolute honour today to invite His Worship the Mayor of the Clutha District, Brian Cadogan, to join me in the welcoming section of the council meeting. We've got a number of staff, we've got public, and we have a number of people on live feed as well. So I thought it would be a fantastic opportunity just to bring in Brian and hear from him some of the things that the council has underway and any messages he has for us. You're welcome.
Kia ora. No mahare mai, kia ora katoa. Welcome, everyone. Look, it's a real privilege to have the Otago Regional Council come down to Clutha, and I'm so looking forward to catching up with you for breakfast tomorrow morning. Thank you, Chair Gretchen, for the invite. I won't bore you for too long. We know what it's like having politicians talking. I will say that Clutha's gone to considerable trouble in recent times to implant a councillor in your midst, so we're not getting any information back from him, but it's good to see ex-councillor McCall here. Can I make a special note that Lloyd was a good councillor in his time with us, and I'm sure he's a valued asset here. The last time I had the opportunity to speak to you, I made the commitment that we would be an exemplar in the Three Waters department. So obviously, back here today, I have to stand and say to you that, as with all things Three Waters, nothing quite flows at the pace that you want it to, and yet what manifested from that promise was that in our long-term plan, we've assigned specifically $141 million to Three Water projects, and we're starting to chip some off. So we've got the Greenfields Bore project, which hopefully you may see tomorrow. I don't know whether it's your trip or our trip. We're here in the district. We've got some big projects in the Greenfields Bore, 14 million. You will have seen the pipe work at Waihola, but you will also have noted that nothing's easy in this environment. You will have also seen last week that there was a mutual agreement that us and our contractor park company, and that will, in the 1st of July, mean that we're going to do a bespoke arrangement where primarily it'll be the council taking over. Obviously, in the inception of this, we thought it was to July next year. Now it's to July 2026. But we'll be, as I say, be doing a bespoke model where we are the primary overseer, but we'll be looking at an amalgam of contractors, consultants, our own staff, and it's our intention to look forward, not look back. We know that this Three Waters discussion has been it's been an intriguing one, and it's opened my eyes. As a district, Clutha District, we run 12 sewage plants and 16 water plants. Three Waters, as you know now, is pretty much entirely an urban issue. So those 12 sewage plants and 16 water plants are paid for by 6,000 urban rated units. You do the maths. So it's not without the challenges, and I think it's symptomatic of the challenges that Otago and Southland will now have to confront as a group in the short to medium term. Other issues I suppose I should touch on, we're going out with a 5.14% rate rise reflective of the inflationary environment we're in. I have been the main instigator of holding a 4% rate cap now for 9 years, and I would have to say that there's been some unintended consequence of that I have to wear myself. I will always stand rigidly to protect the interests of the pensioners and the vulnerable, And yet long term, when you hold at a 4% rate, there is, as I say, unintended consequence that we now have to be in this environment aware of. We're going through, like everyone else, obviously our annual plan submissions process this week, rolling into next week's variables. Not seeing too much more pressure, and by hokey, we couldn't want too much more pressure this year. We've always managed to drive our social aspects of our annual plan through our money, because we do have money invested. That investment is for the first time ever not performed for us, so we don't have that reservoir to go to this year. So it'll make it a challenging annual plan. And of course, who knows where we're all going with our long-term plans after the announcement of last week. Some key things that I wish to discuss with Regional Council, and you will see the maps, and I openly acknowledge that I'm here as a lay person, as a Balclutherite. We as lay people are seeing the sandbar come up, and I hope when you go on your bus trip tomorrow, seeing that sandbar come up. Inchcleuth is growing, so it seems to us. And if it comes up, I'll leave it to you to work out where the river will most likely go as we see inevitably a big flood. I'm really concerned that if you're snipping it off at that end, it's got very few choices where the point of least resistance is. I ask you, please, could you consider it tomorrow? Second one is, and this is a more personal note, I took it on myself after, because part of our I was talking with Councillor Lord just before. Clutha District went from 19,200. We plummeted down to 16,400. And the population, and what that did over a very short period was, primarily it was the young people that left. The young people left in their droves. And when they did that, the social cohesion around sport, cultural, your churches, everything. I would say, if you've only got 3 kids wanting to play netball, no one's playing netball, and that was the Clutha District. So we have gone, people will go, why are you spending money on that blimmin' hub down there when you should be spending it on bricks and on pipes under the ground? We, as a business plan, were looking at our ratepayer base just absolutely going through the floor. To sustain as a business, we had to rectify that. So consequently, we are quite literally putting the bait out to try and attract people to the just on 1,000 jobs that we can never, ever, perpetually, never, ever fill in our district. Our economy is underperforming, the social cohesion is underperforming, and that's why you will see Balclutha, Main Street upgrades, the new facility at the rec centre, the hub. We're going into a major transformation of Milton, and we're doing that around the district, putting out the bait in the hope that they come in. So I love where we are, because it is a challenge at the moment. Right at the delivery stage, we're hitting that hard inflationary period that you'll have, and we're going to have to obviously make compromises in our decisions. But I will say the functionality of our council, from a political arm, I'm immensely proud of my council for the cohesion that we have. When I look at the relationship, and where's ex-chair Andrew will know that we had a strong relationship in the Lower South Island. And can I say it's been a tonic having when naughty boys start arguing, to have someone who can put a moderate comment or two in to calm us down. It's been really appreciated, Chair Robertson's input into the wider group. And challenging times. Our commitment is that we're still head down and believing in a better future for our district. And once again, really appreciate the time you've given me now, and also the time for breakfast tomorrow morning. Kia ora.
Wow. That was really fantastic. I think it's really good to have a local context. And yeah, it's really special for us to be able to come and hold our council meeting in different places around our region. This is our home as well. We share this home. And yeah, thank you so much for taking time out of your extremely busy day to be here with us in person. That means a lot to us. And I know that you probably need to get away soon too. So
can I please apologise? There's a group of Taiwanese students that I'm introducing down at the school that was booked in before here. I'd love to sit and see how another council operates. I missed the opportunity, but thank you for the chance.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, a little bit of a different welcome today, but that was good. Thank you. So now we are on to the apologies, and I understand, oh no, we have Kevin Malcolm as well. So that's fantastic. I think that we have everyone then, no apologies. Public forum, we do have a public forum. We actually have 4 speakers today. Understanding orders, we have a limit of 30 minutes for public forum in total. So generally we have 5 minutes per speaker. So we will stick to that, and just for everyone to be aware that the ability to question today will be limited. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Wilson.
The
Yeah.
question is, understanding orders, do we have the ability to extend that if we wanted to by vote later on?
Do we? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that should be okay today, though,
Yeah,
by the
yeah, thank you.
feel of what we're receiving. Yeah. So first, I'll just read out the order so that the presenters know. We've first got Shane Bocock of the Pomahaka Watercare Group, then Pierre Marasti, Extinction Rebellion. Then we have Adam Curry speaking on free fares. I think it could be slightly different from that. Tessa Campbell as well from OUSA speaking on free fares. So Shane, you are welcome to come and present. I think the spot for you is just there. And if you can speak into the mic, that's brilliant. Then on the internet, they can hear you.
Okay, no trouble.
Welcome.
Thank you. Can people hear me okay? I'll stay sitting. That's fine. I was going to stand and deliver, but now this is fine. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, for the opportunity. And crikey, that's a hard act to follow. Now I've got to deliver to the same level as Mayor Cadogan. So good luck to me. My name's Shane Bocock. I am the project coordinator for a good slice of the riparian planting project being undertaken currently by the Pomahaka Watercare Group. Many of you, or some of you, will know me as the planner and project manager and promoter of the Waipihi wetland. I'll talk about that in a few moments' time, but can I just ask, is there a timekeeper? I know I've got 3 people behind me now, so okay, thank you, 5 minutes. Look, there's a statistic sheet going around which is, I guess, a brief outline of what we're trying to achieve. As far as the Pomahaka Watercare Group goes, the timing and the concept of this was perfect for the Watercare Group, given that, you know, we're dealing with some mitigation opportunities for the water quality in the greater catchment, 2,000 square kilometres. You'll know it's a fairly big area and fairly diverse land uses. So the idea was to undertake this project as a result of the Jobs for Nature initiative, the Shane Jones previous 1 billion trees initiative, and the government's opportunity for groups such as ours to apply for the PGF, so the Provincial Growth Fund funding. There has been in the region of sort of $3.5 million put towards this, committed towards the outcomes staged over the 3-year period. Where we're at the moment is, you know, we're 2+ years into the project. We've got, you know, close on 200,000 trees in the ground. But I guess the why is pretty important to us. The integrating of a project like this as a riparian planting project follows on from all the other good work and the mitigating strategies and opportunities that farmers have to improve water quality in their particular catchment. So the idea was to spread the riparian funding over the entire catchment, tributary by tributary, as we went, not necessarily limiting it to just the members of the Pomahaka Watercare Group, which is about 50% of the farming public. and to, I guess, look for opportunities where the best gains can be made, best bang for buck for funding that's been delivered. So tributaries which have got the poorest quality water results over time, and we already know that there's been a lot of efforts put into those water courses. So to supercharge that to a point, work with the new regulations, which was the NES, NPS, that dictates where a new fence could go. I guess selling that to the farming community, as well as the benefits of separating a waterway from a farming operation on a limited basis to provide a riparian zone. So that's essentially why we've, or how we've gone about applying policy, which was developed from our membership-based committee work and also from a stakeholder group that we have as a bit of an independent voice. How we prioritise sites, which generally is, like I said, to spread the opportunity around the catchment and to limit the amount of funding on one particular property, so that we could reach out to as many properties as we could. And you've got there, you know, we're close on 300 planting sites, well over 100 kilometres of fencing. The fencing policy is to have that fence in line with the NES. So, you know, for councillors here, you'll know that, you know, sort of 3 metres away from the top of a watercourse bank, or 5 metres away to the edge of the water. But essentially we do exceed that in many, many sites. And we've been able to incorporate a little bit more critical source area protection and just put in a buffer zone that makes perfect sense as far as mitigations go. So I see my time is up, sorry. Just a wee nod to what we've achieved so far at the Waipihi wetland. It's going along just fine. There's still continued planting commitment by the farm owners, and currently we're looking to fund a gravel track right around the wetlands so that members of the public can have ease of access into that. So that's currently ongoing.
Thank you very much, Shane. We've got time for 1 or 2 questions. Yep, Councillor Scott.
So what can we do for you, sir?
Do for us, I guess, as far as the wetland goes, we would like some more support for initiatives to provide, like I said, better public access. We're partway through funding and applications to various trusts and you know, Lions Club locally, things like that. We didn't quite qualify for the Eco Fund policy settings because it's a civil type of project, not necessarily a green one. However, it's important to certainly the landowners and us and anybody who would like to visit the wetland, is that it's for all abilities. We've had people visit the wetland on crutches and have had struggled to get around a wee bit. So the track is the, I guess the last cab off the rank at the moment, and we think it's quite important just to complete the job. There's still planning that's going to go on there for the next 10 years and more. We think we've got that covered at this stage.
Thanks. Councillor Laws.
Got 39 interviews here. Was that Jobs for Nature?
Yep, they are Jobs for Nature. A lot of those have been in the fencing and the nursery work, especially the nursery work. Actually, the plants that have been supplied were contracted as a sole supplier of plants, and that was largely, or pretty much completely done by Blue Mountain Nurseries out of Tapanui, and they took on immediately apprentices and have followed quite a few of them through. There's been 5 or so there, but also fencing companies have taken on staff. So the Jobs for Nature was about creating new jobs that didn't exist before or ceased to exist because of the COVID effect. So we've been able to enhance that.
My second question, what happens when the funding runs out?
Well, to those people, I'm pretty sure that the work generated from that nursery, if we're just talking about the nursery, employment is still tight for them anyway. They will just soak them into their their existing workforce because they've got natural attrition anyhow. So I don't think it matters too much as far as that goes. The fencing guys, I think there's a bit of a struggle there. However, the fences that we took on were shy of work anyhow, so it's kept them going through that COVID period. I think that's worked really, really well. The other beneficiary would be the production of posts locally. Stuart Timber, it's been the sole supplier there as well. So there's been a lot of extra employment opportunities for them. And I think on the same basis as the nursery, there's natural turnover within there. So any increased employment will be soaked up in their current business going forward.
Thank you, Shane. It's fantastic to have people come along to public forum, particularly locally. So thank you for coming along today. And our next public forum speaker will be Pierre.
Kia ora koutou katoa. My name is Pierre Marasti, and I am speaking on behalf of Extinction Rebellion. Cyclone Hill, the Auckland floods, Cyclone Gabrielle, tornadoes, and an ongoing stream of smaller-scale floods have already marked the start of 2023. In light of the just-released IPCC AR6 synthesis report, this shouldn't come as a surprise, and we need to brace for more. This report is by far the most devastating ever released by the IPCC. The press called it scientists' final warning to the world. This is not an exaggeration. The report warns us that the latest model results are far worse than the previous ones. They warn us that we have already caused substantial damages and irreversible losses to our ecosystems. That billions of us, including here in New Zealand, are highly vulnerable to climate change, that our food and water security are already affected, that heat is increasingly causing human morbidity and mortality, and that the window of opportunity to secure a livable future is closing rapidly. Here is what the World Meteorological Organization says about it. All the climate parameters are moving in the totally wrong direction. The report also confirms that whatever we do, temperatures will keep rising for the next 20 years, and that we will reach the 1.5 degree limit in the early 2030s. It also confirms that the risks associated with any future warming are greater than previously assessed, that extreme events will continue to become larger, that the likelihood of abrupt and irreversible changes will keep increasing, that losses and damages will keep increasing, and that we will soon reach the limits of adaptation. But there is no point in writing a report to simply state that we are doomed. Here is what Antonio Guterres says about it. This IPCC report is a how-to guide to defuse the climate time bomb. It is a survival guide for humanity. The report precisely lists all the main actions that need to be taken while measuring the effectiveness and the comparative cost with the status quo. This clearly shows that the cost of action is far cheaper than the cost of inaction. It is literally cheaper in many places to invest in new low-emission systems than to simply maintain emission-intensive systems. You add to that the co-benefits for human health of improved air quality, and the savings can be even larger than the required investments. Now, even if we have all the solutions needed at our disposal, this will not happen just by magic. They estimate that to reach these goals, we will need to invest 3 to 6 times more than we are at the moment in climate mitigation. Probably because nothing has happened since the last warning in 2018, the IPCC's advice is still that we need to halve our emissions by 2030. But they are now urging rich nations to reach net zero by 2040 in less than 17 years. So what we're asking you today is for you to read the IPCC synthesis report, particularly figure SPM.7 that details all the actions needed and that you follow their advices. I will finish the speech with words from Peter Thorne, one of the co-writers of this report. It is ultimately true that emissions are the result of our individual actions. We are the ultimate consumers. We need to be enabled by governments, but action is needed at all levels, from intergovernmental, through governments, through communities, to individuals. We are beyond the point where climate change can be somebody else's problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. Any questions for Pierre? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, then Adam Curry.
Kia ora, ko Adam toka ingoa. I'm from Free Fares New Zealand. I'm just really here to encourage you to support both the motions to join our collective, which we have over a dozen councils signed on already, and also to look into doing free fares for off-peak public transport. I think we've obviously talked to you about this before in previous meetings, but we know that there's evidence that free fares increases public transport patronage here and overseas. In particular, we know that 1 year following its implementation, the Super Gold Card caused 1.4 million fewer car journeys. So we know that it really does make a big difference, and there's been a lot of discussion in this council and elsewhere that free fares doesn't necessarily increase bus patronage. There's a lot of evidence that it has here. We also know that free fares has impacted bus patronage in New Zealand for councils that have led the way and have driven free fares already before the government comes here. A great example of this was in the Bay of Plenty, where 40% ridership increased by 40% after the free fare service was created. And we know again that free fares works. We know it boosts ridership and contributes to mode shift. We know that it reduces private car use. We know it makes our cities more thriving, more bustling, where we can all get to where we need to go. Affordable. I know for me, I often didn't go out because it was too expensive to drive and there was never any bus going past me in Pine Hill and Dunedin. And so with free fares, I would have gone to Dunedin. I would have contributed to local businesses. I would have been involved with the community, and we would have had a thriving, nice place for everyone. And this is common for so many people. Of course, it also supports education. And we know that for tertiary students at Otago and elsewhere, the cost of public transport is a serious impeding to study, and people often don't go to lectures and stay at home because it's just too much work to get there, which public transport would enable. And again, we know that it would also habit the use of public transport in young people. So once we start using public transport, we continue for the rest of our lives. So we know that there's all sorts of reasons to have free fares. And, as we just heard from Mayor Cadigan, what our regions look like when our regions are not vibrant and are not thriving. And obviously the causes are different with population issues, but we know how severe it is when we don't have our thriving community-led, cities that get, in Dunedin's case, can be, bustled, hustled up with cars bumper to bumper. And so ultimately, we want more vibrant cities. We want better mental health. We know that all these things free fares encourages. And so it's really about helping folks get out and about, enabling the regions to thrive, and actually investing something that's a really, really good use of funds. We've seen other councils do it. We don't have to wait for the government. And it'd be awesome, of course, if you did get involved in our collective, where over a dozen councils have signed on and join our collective. So we can have free fares from a national led direction, but we really do need local councils to lead the way. And so we also encourage you to complete that study of free off-peak public transport, I think you're discussing later, to see what it would really take to move towards public transport free, because we've seen leadership from these other places, and ultimately, we don't want to be just listening to the bus companies. We are telling them what to do. We are the ones with control, and they serve us. So ultimately, we really encourage you to support both motions and to ultimately move towards free public transport for all. But we know it's the stepping stone to get there. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Councillor Weir.
My question is, could you not steal my talking points that I've saved for later? No, I'm kidding. Would you be able to clarify what the campaign is, or who the campaign is asking pays for this free fares campaign?
For free fares.
And no, where the money would be coming from, and what the cost would be for the regional council in signing on to this.
So firstly, for the cost of the regional council, there's no cost whatsoever for the regional council signing on to this. We've had all sorts of councils that's just saying that the council supports and the government the demands, and the demands are actually specifically free public transport for under 25s, for community service card holders, and also for tertiary students. So those three groups, it's free public transport for under 25s, community service card holders who need them, and tertiary students. And that was back in the day, that was the groups that were identified as the most at need. And that's the group that, the most amount of councils and all these people that have signed on to the coalition support the government paying for free public transport. So again, there is no cost to the ORC in signing on to this. Where does the funding come from? Sorry, I just want to grab the notes on that. We are basically we're requesting the government directly funds it, so that that funding could come from all sorts of different places, and various options have been suggested, but it's ultimately national led funding from the budget, from elsewhere. And was there a third part to that question?
No, that covers everything. Thanks.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Kia ora, Adam. Apologies, I wasn't at the previous meeting, so didn't hear your I think you presented the last one, or maybe it was Tessa. It's interesting. I was going to ask that question about who does pay. So we're in Balclutha at the moment, where there's a wonderful community here who would love to even consider having a public bus service. They all pay taxes down here, and what the problem is that you're asking the general rate taxpayer, who may or may not get a bus service, to fund a bus service in Dunedin, for example. And I'm just trying to find out the equity when we don't provide a regional bus service that would give them a return on that investment, and how equitable that is.
I think we can make those arguments for all sorts of things. I think there's a lot of ways we support rural and small towns with the ORC and various funding and work that the ORC does. In some ways, there's other ways that ORC spends money just on cities. Not every single type of funding, every single initiative that ORC comes up with supports regularly. You support some wetland funding, and whatever the issue is, it supports the particular group. So yes, some funding here will go towards maybe more so in cities and some of the bigger areas, but other places of funding most definitely go towards supporting rural folks as well. So it's not a reason not to do it here, because it also has impacts elsewhere. I guess that would be our argument there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for presenting today and joining us. It's always good. And the next person to present will be Tessa Campbell for OUSA. Feel free to come forward.
Awesome. Kia ora. Can you all hear me fine? Awesome. Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for having me here to speak to you all today. My name is Tessa Campbell, and if you don't remember me from my last visit, I'm the political representative at OUSA. I'm here today to urge this council to commit to joining the Free Fares Coalition. The OUSA joined this coalition earlier this year because it's easy to see how free fares would benefit the student population which we represent. With the average student budget hovering at about $300 a week, and somewhere between half and 2/3 of this number typically being taken up by rent alone, most students can't justify the extra cost of taking public transport in Dunedin. This limits our options for inner city transport and generally makes our schedules more stressful. Even assuming that busing would cost students about $15 a week, that still amounts to 5% of an average weekly student budget. Making fares free would therefore make a very tangible difference to students' lives. This issue is not confined to just the student population, however, with many groups in our region, such as the under 25-year-olds, community service card holders, disabled people, all feeling the pinch. Joining the Free Fares Coalition would not only signal to these communities that the ORC is committed to improving their access to public transport and in turn their well-being, but it also signals to central government that they need to be doing more to support public transport initiatives across the country. Joining this coalition is a logical and important next step for your council. I would also encourage the council to support Councillor Elliott's motion for the transport team to produce a report on the feasibility of free off-peak fares. Gathering information on this would provide valuable insight into whether this is a viable possibility for improving Dunedin's public transport. It's easy to see the many potential benefits of improving our public transport systems, both for our tangata, our people, and our whenua land. Improving public transport patronage will improve congestion, and I'm sure you're all well aware of the impacts of private vehicle emissions on the environment too. I hope that you'll all take this into consideration in your discussions around this issue today and do your best to support our people, our communities, and our futures. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you to everyone. We have time for 1 or 2 questions here as well, if there are any. No. Must have been, oh, no, Councillor Scott has one.
Yeah, I mean, the question on my mind is that if we do join, the Free Fares Coalition, that there becomes some automatic expectation that we will deliver on free fares, whether it's funded by central government or wherever. That's a bit of a leap of faith at this point, don't you think?
I think joining the coalition doesn't bind you to anything. It's more of a signal of your intentions. I mean, I think everyone is well aware that it's difficult to prioritize where you're spending your money. And I know that there are a wide range of issues that you are, dealing with as a council. And I appreciate that. And I think the community will just see this as a sign that you are committed to trying to improve this issue, whether you are able to or not. Without central government support is a completely different issue. And I think it just signals that you as a council support this initiative and that the central government should be dealing with this issue and not you, that it should be a centralized issue. That's essentially the heart of this coalition. So,
Cool, thank you.
Thank you very much. And
Kia ora.
thanks for taking the time, all of you, to join us today. Okay, we now have the confirmation of the agenda, and we have actually had a request from staff to change the order of items slightly so that 8.1 and 8.2 are swapped. So the vegetable production one is taken first. So I can move. Yep, 8.2, the Minister for the Environment's request for information on providing vegetable production through regional plans be considered first. I've moved that, and Councillor Wilson has seconded. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Otherwise, the agenda remains as it is, I understand. Declaration of interest there. If you've had any changes to that, you're welcome to note them now, or if the matter comes up later on. Confirmation of minutes. The minutes are there from the 22nd of March. Does somebody care to move them? Councillor Weir. Seconded Councillor Mepham. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Actions then. Open actions are there. Grab those. I think there was one that was due, I think, of joining forces on what's the matter. Yeah, that was it. And we had an update on that, I think, last time, that it's still underway. Other than that, I don't think there's any that are past their date for reporting back to us. Nick's probably got nothing further on that shared services action. No, it's just, sorry. Yeah.
RSHL.
Yeah.
No, we've received all the paperwork. We've got legal going through it, just checking all the documentation. So we haven't signed it yet, but once we're comfortable that we'll look from a legal perspective, we'll get it executed, which was that was the resolution.
In the pipeline. Good one. Okay, so we got all the actions there. Do we need to do something? I don't think so.
Can I just ask a question? And I knew there was one.
Sure.
The one about the RHDB removal from the National Unwanted Organism list is the date is the 30th of June, and that's fine, but I'm just wondering how we operationalize a motion and who chooses the time frame to do it in. And the only reason I ask it in respect of this is that that's very close to your action plan for the following year, and whether that would have any bearing if it came back earlier.
I don't think that has any bearing. How do we choose the dates that we get these actions done by?
sometimes they're set in the resolution, and if they're not, then it just becomes a matter for the general manager and usually the manager concerned to identify a date that seems, we've got to give ourselves enough time to get it done.
Yeah.
And if there is a critical path for it, make sure we meet that. My view of that one is in understanding the operational plan. This is just looking at what process would be required from central government if that was to occur. So I don't see a huge critical path there relating to the plan for next year, but that's generally how we set the data.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can move on then to the matters for consideration. And so 8.2 then, which is author Tom de Pausemaker, which I think Fleur's there.
Fleur's here in place of Tom.
Okay, thanks,
Tom.
Anita, and
That's
other
just
Tom,
Thomas.
yeah. Okay, so yes, as we have all seen, we did receive a letter from the Minister for the Environment, and it's a requirement really for us to provide information. And I understand that this letter went to all councils, I guess unitary and regional in New Zealand. And yeah, so that's the context of it. Is there anything else that anybody from the staff wants to bring to our attention?
No, I think you've summed it up. Basically, we just wanted to bring it to your attention and have a process to respond to it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Anyone got any questions? Councillor Laws?
Yeah, I was fascinated by this because this paper seems to link. Is Tom here?
No, but I can
got Fleur.
This paper seems to link the request for vegetable statistics to fresh water. And I'm
Yes,
going,
yeah.
it's nothing to do with fresh water.
Yeah, I heard Minister Parker speak last week to this one. So I guess some issues potentially around this is well, that he raised anyway, and Horticulture New Zealand had sort of raised that these may potentially be issues. He doesn't know if these are issues yet, but they're going to consider it. For example, councils that set a per hectare cap on nutrients could perhaps, I don't know, be inadvertently making it difficult for vegetable production, whereas if you looked at the area from a catchment for a nutrient load or a smaller type area, it would be different than per hectare is quite maybe limiting. So there's that issue.
The primary reason that he's asking for this, that's the point that I'm trying to make. And the reason why I have a bit of problem with this paper in actual fact and the way it's presented is because of a joint announcement was made last year in September by Damien O'Connor, the Minister of Agriculture, and by David Parker as the Minister for the Environment, when they was related to highly productive land. It's all related to land that is being converted. Highly productive land, particularly in the Pukekohe, was the major area, but other areas throughout New Zealand, from that productive land into residential development. And the minister at the time said that the real reason that they were introducing this was all about vegetables. It was all about design so that New Zealanders would continue to have access to leafy green vegetables. Those were his direct quotes. And I'm looking at this and going, yeah, it wasn't actually to do with fresh water. It was in actual fact to do with making sure that stuff that councils are, this could be a good example. Pukekohe is the best example. They've been petitioned for 2 or 3 years prior to that all that productive vegetable growing land, from which roughly 30% of all New Zealand's vegetables come each year, was being used for residential subdivisions and developments. And so that's the reason why. I would imagine that this request is directly linked to that policy, the National Policy Statement on Productive Land, and also to why.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, how many vegetable growing areas do we have here, and are they at risk from residential development here? And the question I was then going to ask, and the next question I was going to ask in relationship to that, so having established that that was the background to why this request might be asked for, was have we got any indication so far currently of any vegetable or cropping on productive land in the Otago region that might be threatened by residential development.
Yeah.
So can I take the first? This letter is directly in response to the MPS Freshwater, not the MPS HPL, as a result of Cyclone Gabrielle. So it's not, so you're right, there is a focus in the MPS HPL to protect land use classes 1 to 3 and other area that's considered HPL. This one is around nutrients, sediment runoff. So it's got a different focus to the MPS HPL. So this letter is directly in response to what councils are doing to implement the MPS Freshwater.
So it's nothing to do with the policy announced
No.
8 months ago, which is we don't want you to do any vegetables at all. And we don't have any of that information currently.
So this one is about the MPS Freshwater and the implications of the cyclone on New Zealand's ability to feed ourselves as a
So it
result
is,
of that.
yeah, productive land. Yeah.
But it's a freshwater lens. So and I can't give you the exact information, but in Southland's economic project, they actually did some work on nutrients, as Chair Robertson's talked about, and hectare per hectare bulbs and things like that are far more nutrient intense than dairying, cropping and things like that. So that's why there's a freshwater angle. It's about a water quality aspect.
So they're running counterproductive, aren't they, Anita?
No, that they're trying to protect. So I think this letter is about how can you provide for this while knowing you've got to protect the land under the MPS HPL as well. So they sit side by side.
I would just describe what they're looking at as trying to foresee any unintended consequences within the NPS FM relating to the ability for New Zealand to keep producing food. And that's what they're trying to get a handle on, is that if it goes down the track of just following the NPS FM and the controlling pollutants to fresh water, there might be unintended consequences, which are now very much in the spotlight following the loss of production in Hawke's Bay.
So basically they want to make sure we're not putting a moratorium on being able to grow for ourselves under the NPS FM when you're trying to provide for it under the MPS HPL.
So the productive land has a sort of primacy, is that what you're saying?
Well, it has a concurrent driver.
Yeah. But we don't actually set the we're not administering the productive land one, are we?
Yes, we are.
I thought that was territorial authority.
Regional councils are required to map.
Required to map.
And put it in our RPS.
So we will set the rules on vegetable production potentially, and that land use under the both of them, productive land and of that territorial is to determine whether or not they should allow subdivisions to occur in currently productive areas. Yes.
No, we potentially will have land use controls around land uses like vegetable production, like we might around forestry, like we might around farming, but not around subdivision. So we get involved in the subdivision and protecting the HPL through policies in the RPS, but we don't implement them. This is one that we would implement through our land and water plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I had very much thought it was about unintended consequences, but the other one of that is that, and this is a question from not mine, but I was talking to Kevin to see how he was last night because I thought he was going to be here, and he talked about irrigation. So we've got rules, or we're looking at rules in the land and water plan about irrigation, but equally, and probably with the head mindset that it's for livestock irrigation, but vegetables definitely need water. And are we going to be nimble enough in our thinking about that? I think that's also part of this, isn't it? The unintended consequences of rules that may affect the productivity of land in that sort of context.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've got a catchment where water quantity is at or near its limit, and it's a vegetable growing area that needs water, then that's a challenge that you've got to manage. If you're over allocated in that area, you've got far different decisions to make than if you've got some headroom and you've still got water to allocate. So there's definitely water quantity aspect as well.
Well, the other part of that is, as we look at land use diversification, is understanding is there that the irrigation potential, and this again is to produce vegetables which may be seen as better than livestock, but it still requires some water or dairy. Yes. And it's having the finesse about the end output that's different potentially or not.
Well, we haven't had active conversations about whether or not you're going to prioritise some land uses over the other yet. They are.
How forestry we have.
They are coming.
They're coming, yeah.
They are coming, yep. In fact, they're in the next bunch of governance group meetings. I think I haven't seen it. But there are some active decisions around, if you have both nutrients and water as a volume to allocate, whether or not you want to make decisions about how you allocate those, or whether you just want to leave them as a resource more generally.
Okay. Anyone else got questions? No. Okay, so we've had some discussion there on nutrients and water as limiting factors that no doubt we'll be thinking about and responding, and also the wider context of policy and the juxtaposition of those. So we got some recommendations there, 1 to 4. Does somebody care to move those? Is there a seconder? Yep. Councillor Weir and Councillor Somerville, and anybody want to discuss that further?
Can I just make an amendment?
What would it be?
Approves of the first annual report, so it's to number 3, and provides a copy to elected members.
It's okay. Yep.
It's in 4 sort of.
Well, is it a 4?
I think it's just around providing a copy to elected members.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Just double checking what 4 is. All right.
That's relevant.
Yeah, it's presented to council, but you want to see it. Well, I suppose, it depends how you define what presented to council. Oh, no, present to council, it says the date too. You want it as soon as it, does that one satisfy it,
Yeah, why
or?
not? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can just.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just an email.
Send it to us.
Yeah.
I don't know if that needs to be.
We can send it out, can't we?
Yeah.
That'll be fine. Yeah.
You could say
There's a motion in there that will ensure that you get it. but we
Yeah.
can undertake the email to
I'm just trying to think they'd save yourself a report at the next meeting. Actually.
Okay, so there's an amendment to 3 then that it's circulated to councillors.
Then you
Do I have to move and second the amendment?
Do we?
Sorry, I've forgotten if we need to move and second the amendment separately. Yeah. So, no, it's annoying. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
So we put the first one.
Can I change, get the wording on that change? Sorry, I'm need to make sure that
Yep, so blah, blah, blah. Minister under the delegated author proves that the first annual.
What's this month away, isn't it? You'll have it done by the end of this week, though, won't you? No, next week.
And circulated to councillors when complete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then do you need 4?
Yeah, we'll have 4 as well. Then the public can see what we're doing as well, which seems reasonable.
All right.
Has someone seconded that?
Yeah. Thank you. So actually, the mover and the seconder, are you happy to just incorporate that? That'll make it easier. Yeah, thank you. Okay, they're happy to do that. Then it's not an amendment. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. Okay, all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Okay. Back to flood bylaw then.
Yeah.
So no.
Seconded.
Seriously. That's all.
Yeah.
So Michelle and Alison have driven all the way here for this very important paper, which you are welcome to outline to us the exact breadth and depth of the matter, if you'd like to, but we have read it.
And it's moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Thank you. We didn't drive all the way here. We've got other business as well.
Oh, thank God.
Thank you for reading it. If there's any questions, we're happy to answer and explain why we're here.
Yeah.
And around the bylaw paper.
Right, thank you. Some minor changes to names and maps. Yeah.
Not minor, major for those names.
Minor for us to change, but
Yes.
major if you get the names of things wrong, isn't it? That's right. Yes. Anyone got any questions then? Councillor Weir?
I was just wondering what, you'd say is the most significant change amongst these changes and the implications of it?
There are no implications for the operation of the bylaw. It's purely about errors in the geographical names. There were about 4 picked up, Lake Tuatatoto spelled incorrectly, Barnago being on the wrong side of the river. Those are probably the key big ones.
Kate and I were on the hearing for this and we didn't pick them up either, so we will. Oh, you did. Oh, yeah, sorry. There we go. Yeah, so Kate did pick them up, but well done, Kate. Yeah.
It's just interesting to note that these belong to a base layer.
Yeah.
So they weren't sort of inherently incorrect as a result of staff or people doing that. So it's a base layer that's been corrected.
Yeah.
In due time.
Thanks. Kate, have you got a question?
Well, and I'm sure this isn't the time or the place, but my question is, at what point when we do have the choice, and this is something that I think will be around for, this is the first review in over 10 years?
Yeah, it's a
That
10-year.
one day we may grow up and actually spell some of the other words correctly, like Taiari, and that's a question for all of us to be mindful of, because we have been challenged to say when that might happen. They are names of places that are distinct because of, and the meaning is distinct by the spelling. And I just would say I'd love to see us rolling this out without it being an issue at some stage soon, but today is probably not the day for that.
Thank you. It's probably not a question so much. Yep, thanks.
I just like
So
the stuff.
yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilson. So we do have somebody willing to move, which was Councillor Laws, I think.
Yeah.
And you were willing to second, Councillor Wilson. Anyone want to say anything further? I would doubt it. Okay, thank you. We'll put that then. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Pays per 3. Land and Water Regional Plan, updated project plan and governance. Wait for, I think we have potentially Fleur. Oh yes, there's Fleur again. And Anita as the endorser.
Sorry, I'm just having IT 101 from Richard here.
Yeah. So yeah, the purpose of this paper there was to update us with a detailed project plan and seek approval on how key project and milestone decisions will be made during the development of the plan. So is there anything that needs to be said, first of all, in relation to that?
So I'll let Fleur speak to the paper, but just before that happens, just to remind you that we do have Matthew Horton doing the project management health check, and he's due to report to governance group next week. We're just checking in to make sure we're still on track with that, but he's been having one-on-ones with key personnel from the project as part of that process. So that's still a piece of work that's underway.
Thanks. Fleur, have you got anything you'd like to add?
I would just note that this paper is kind of trying to do a few different things. So just in case it's potentially a little confusing, there were 3 attachments, and the first 2 of these were actually mixed up in the agenda, which is probably my fault. So the first one is the updated reporting template, and the second one was the report that was sent to the Minister on the 12th of April. So just in case that's a little unclear. And then the third one there is some revisions, very minor revisions to the terms of reference, just to reflect the updated committee structure, etc. So
I was just going to add for some context, the difference between the report that went to the Minister is some of the feedback we got at governance group is that a little bit more detail would be useful. So the first report is a little bit more detail. There's a bit more nuance in the statuses and the colours, just to set that out, and a bit more in the commentary. But again, just noting this is the baseline report and it will be added to as we go. So they're the differences between what the Minister got and what you're seeing now. It's just that bit more nuance in some of that stuff.
So, sorry, Anita, Just answering the chair's question around the more detailed project plan. So my understanding, Richard, is that you're taking responsibility for this, frankly, and a health check's not what I was expecting from Matt. So, you know, a detailed project plan includes resourcing, timelines, a business case, budget. You know, that's what I've been expecting is a detailed project plan in terms of this project. So milestones doesn't meet that. So I'm just clarifying whether we're on the same page.
So what I'm expecting from Matt following a review is a report on in his professional opinion, how is this project set up? What project is the project structure? The purpose is the reporting. So
Checking people might be able to hear you. Right?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So he's been undertaking a review to give us some confidence that this project is being run in a way that a professional, which is what he is, would expect a project of this scale to be run in order to give governors confidence, which is the thing we talked about in Ranfurly. So I am expecting that there will be a number of recommendations that come from his report around the project structure, around how the reporting, and he has fed into this reporting as it stands at the moment. So this does reflect some of his work, although not all of it, would be my assumption. In terms of a full project plan and what I would consider more of, you know, what you did the business case level around a full review of resourcing and costs, I will wait until I see what his recommendations are before making any of those commitments.
Great.
But I've got to catch up with Anita and Matthew scheduled either late this week or next week, so that we can make sure we're on track to report back to the council, and that will be a document that you will receive, and there'll be some recommendations in there around how we move forward with that monthly reporting.
Thanks. I can see we've got some hands here, but just I guess we haven't got a detailed project plan, but we have got the milestone reporting there, which is really good to see. But the question would be, though, without a detailed project plan just right now, I guess for the community listening at the moment, we have got lots of work going on, though. Still, we're not waiting for a detailed project plan before we do more work. There's a whole lot still going on. I guess people would want to feel happy that that's continuing.
Yeah, that's right. So there's lots of different work streams going on to basically culminate. The next key stage is consultation 3, which is scheduled for later on this year.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Wilson.
I've got a couple of questions. One on terms of reference, which I want to leave till later, and I'm not quite sure if you want to deal with those separately, because I think there's some technical things that we need to check, like membership of Rohi representation and things. But look, I'm just wondering about the recommendation 2 and what that does. And I appreciate the terms of reference change it from to the Environmental Science and Policy Committee. And I don't have a problem with that, but I don't actually see where a decision-making process happens by any committee here, because the Land and Water Governance Group can't make decisions, I don't think. You're then putting it for workshops only by the Environmental Science and Policy Committee, and then you're considered by committee of, and before being considered by the committee, I see, and then recommended to be noted by council. But if council want to, so council can't ever change it, is what we're saying. It can only be changed or anything at the Environmental Science and Policy Committee. And that I'm slightly concerned about, because I think it trumps Environmental Science and Policy Committee over council, which I'm not sure we're allowed to do. I'm not sure, or are we, is that the intention? I'm not quite sure if we're set up to do that, that's all.
I guess it says noted, doesn't it? But you could actually change that at council in theory.
Well,
some other motion.
Yeah, can you understand the problem? I don't. Yeah.
If I could just perhaps explain the rationale for the wording. The reason it says noted is you'll recall that when we noted the flows for Arrow and Cardrona, you didn't want to be locked into a decision. So you noted what was likely to be in the plan, and it's the same process here. we're not asking necessarily for you to decide until you notify the plan. That's not to say you can't have a discussion as part of the paper that goes to council. So the discussion is absolutely there, but the wording is around that kind of drawing a line in the sand, getting a council position on a topic and then using that to move forward, exactly like we did with Arrow and Cardrona. This was the position we got to at the governance group, which is why it's reflected in here.
So understanding that and understanding the need to ensure that we're working collaboratively as much as possible and not dividing. I'm just checking what process is there. And this possibly is going to my next point, which is on the other matters is. This is really complex stuff coming up with rules that may have, and we've already talked about unintended consequences already today, is what I can't see in the framework is another party of experts who are checking that while they're really good ideas in theory, that in practice that they have only, they only deliver the consequences that we want rather than unintended consequences. And so without that surety in there, it means that we're not always getting all the eyes over the stuff and we're almost committing to something without ever having those other eyes over it.
So we have, and it's not detailed in there, but we have, the team are aware of when they will be, well, they will be reaching out to particular people. So for example, we've said to Federated Farmers, when we need to pull on your expertise for a particular topic, we'll run something past you. Hort NZ, you know, they've had discussion, we've had discussions with them about water for root stock in drought years, for example, and making sure that there's provision for that. There was a particular gentleman who we were going to check in with you of his name and the Catlins around intensive winter grazing, the man that came to the meeting and left and then came back because he's so attracted. So we know that those people are out there and we have, the team has a process to make sure they reach out to those people topic by topic rather than a wholesale commitment to go out. So that's the intention.
I like that intention. I'm frustrated probably that it isn't articulated. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. There's a section in the milestones, isn't there, on community consultation? Is
It
that
could
what
be
you're
embellished.
looking? Yeah.
Well, it's more than community. It's actually truth testing the intent of planners by the experts functionally. And I think there is a gap there in some areas that is going to be the difference between us rolling this out with a bit of annoyance and us being in court. And I think we can do a bit much better. Yes.
Yeah, I think we've heard that there is some intention to do that. We're still looking at detailed project planning, I guess, to what we can fit in and can't fit in. But I think a lot of us have heard that feedback, haven't we, from different, whichever group it is on any spectrum. And yeah, I think you've heard from Anita. Well, I think all of us would agree that some ground truthing is useful, like the regional overview work that happened with stakeholders, that sort of thing's pretty good, pretty useful. We've also got probably 5 or 6 months left really until the end of the year when we're right into phase 3 and we're drafted and all that. So I'm sure that Anita is weighing that up, but definitely will have heard those comments. We'll have a good think about it.
Well, I just want to, again, we're selling ourselves short, so if it's not in there and we're intending to do it, great.
So it's absolutely intended to do, but it's not going to be a formal process like the region-wide stakeholder groups were last year. That was a very formalized, set up, independently facilitated piece of work. This is pulling on those expertise when we need them, which we know will be, we know we'll need them.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Sorry for bearing with us on that freestyle questioning session there. No, it was me. Councillor Metham.
I just wanted to thank you for putting a plan together like this. I think it's very useful to be able to see the milestones and also the critical path that's being shown. I think that it'll be, hopefully we're going to see this every month. And the only question I have is, are we on target to complete this task by June 24?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, to to achieve this target by June 24, Anita, could you just remind council when we need to have the proposed land and water regional plan drafted by?
So in very broad terms, the plan will be drafted this year and the statutory consultation will be in the first half of next year, and notification decision to council around about end of May, early June.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Have you got another one?
On terms of reference, when you.
Oh, yeah, okay, thanks. Some detailed questions in a moment. We'll do the broader ones and then we can get on to them. Councillor
Yeah,
Somerville.
I was just going to clarify that recommendation one says note the updated detailed project plan. Well, I don't think we've got the detailed project planned here, so we may need to change that terminology if I'm understanding that right. What are we
Yeah, do we have
updating?
any recommendations? Sorry, on the recommendations then?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's just checking my understanding that in fact
Mm.
this isn't the detailed project plan we'd be noting, it's the revised milestones report.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you,
so
councillor
thank you.
Somerville. You're correct.
Revised milestones report. Are there any others that are, I know the rest are all fine, aren't they? Okay. Yeah, thank you. Councillor Wilson, do you want to raise your other ones?
Look, my concern is if any of us can't do our job, I'm just worried about the FMUs and Rohi that have only one representative. And I think it's really leaving it very, very light. That's the Dunstan and the Upper Lakes Rohi, which are both substantial areas to get round. And the Aaron Cadrona, although that I think has been largely done and noted. But I think there may be some, there may be some, I don't know if there's going to be further consultation with them at all on other methods. But I'm just just wondering whether we should be fleshing that out, really.
Okay. So good point.
What is the rationale for doing one and some?
Don't know. Yeah, maybe.
So just for your reference, you added some additional councillors for exactly the point councillor Wilson's making as additional support, just recognising that there could be circumstances where someone couldn't go or the workload was higher. So we're happy to add additional councillors to that if you want to do that. It's not a problem.
Can you just take us through very quickly though, remind us of what the workloads are going to be for those, so.
Yeah,
Good
so
point.
we've got consultation and now I should be able to tell you about September-ish, I think it is. Hopefully that matches what says in the milestone report. So there'll be some meetings across those FMU and Rohe that we, like we did last time, we'd ask the councillors to attend. And broadly speaking, they opened and closed the meetings for us and sat at tables, worked around, listened to the feedback. So it's not over a long period of time, but it was a reasonably intensive period, and we had lots of councillors turn up to lots of those rather than just their own. It was really helpful to have a good range of councillors.
Yeah, so you might be a representative Rohi councillor, but it's pretty open, isn't it, who gets involved? But it's good to have a leader there that can help to welcome people to the meeting and things like that, and also do some background work. I know Councillor Wilson, you did a lot. Some other people have done some fantastic work as well, rallying people along to those meetings. Yep.
Sorry, my point here is actually, it's more subtle than that. It's about championing once you've been at those meetings, making sure that those concerns that they have expressed actually go through. And that is, it's about being the ears on the ground and the contact person for those people to express those views. And I think there is, I know that stage 3 it's less important, but I think that at that level, you should be going there with more of an idea of what the issues are than maybe just any of us rocking up there just to be listening. It's actually having a slightly better in-depth view of things.
We ended up coming away with a list, like one of those meetings with a list of things to follow up to be done.
And it's being there, just making sure that those things have been ticked off. I think that the good stuff there would be actually for the meeting, making sure some of those things are ticked off and will be addressed at the presentation. So I think it is more potentially.
If you're doing the job well, yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay, so Upper Lakes Rohi with, no, just first on the list, Michael Law is on his own.
To simply allow Alexa and I to be both of them. So you could just add Alexa to Upper Lakes Rohi, and then to Dunstan Rohi, you could just add me. Alexa's the lead in Dunstan, I'm the lead in Lakes, but we talk to each other about it, make sure we're there.
And Gary.
Gary's already got two.
You've got two.
And Caitlin in Oxford.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you put Michael's and my name both on Upper Lakes and on Dunstan.
Yep.
Are
Then we'll
you
just
happy, you're
liaise.
happy with that?
We'll liaise with.
Okay.
Yeah, amongst ourselves.
Is Arrow and Cadrona completely finished?
No, there's still a quality conversation to
Yeah.
have, so we'll go back.
So I'm just wondering if we should put Gary in that one to make him even.
Okay.
Just add Gary to them as well.
Gary, if you
And
would
we
you be
should-
interested in
All
putting
your
Gary?
hardworking people from your constituency are going to get double on everything. Yeah.
Yeah, there you are. So you had one, now you got three.
That's fine, but I think the other one is Arrow and Cadrona, and putting Gary onto that one is what I was
Well,
suggesting.
we've got Aaron Cadron as part of the Dunstan, and I know that if I could, I would be going to that as well.
Yeah,
But-
it doesn't limit us from
You put
going.
Gary on that one, yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's happy. Brilliant. That's what we like.
Can I
And
just
you've
raise
got that
another issue
ready?
though for
Yep.
you, with just to do with
Sure.
governance,
Yep.
if I might? It's to do with membership, which seems imbalanced to me.
Okay.
I'm going to, first of all, what is the purpose of the governance group? So let's go to two, first of all.
Mhm.
And it really is quite a big group. I mean, this is a grunty policy group in it. And it's got more than just sort of developing this, but it also has got I see the responsibility, and it's a deliberate word that's used, of champion. So they're not just developing stuff, they're actually championing this policy and their draft policy through. They're promoters, they're public enablers, and they are lobbyists around this council table. That's what the word champion would mean. Then if I go to the membership, it seems dramatically imbalanced, considering that we get elected democratically. There are 2 permanent ORCF members, that's fine. There are 4 permanently Kaitahu Runaka representative. And then there's a permanently appointed Kaitahu Murahuku representative. Now that would mean that of the 7 permanent members, only 2 of them are elected and 5 of them are appointed from Ngāi Runanga Urunaka. And then I was trying to work out, there might be something else. You can go if you're a councillor, if you're an elected councillor, so the other 10 councillors can go, but they don't have voting rights. They're just there in an advisory capacity. They are welcome to attend, it says under 3.2, non-permanent members, and in an observational capacity. Exactly, observational, that's right. It can't be advisory, they're observational. Just got to sit there and shut up. And to be honest with you, what sort of council are we, where over such incredible critical matter, only 2 elected members of 7 are going to be your permanent members. The other 5 are nominated by your iwi partner, and off you go. I'm sorry, but reputationally and politically, that's just not a smart move.
So, yeah, at the moment though, we have 3 iwi representatives.
Yeah, so through the chair, it's always said 4, and there is absolutely the opportunity for 4, but there is actually only 2 Kaitahu Kia Tako representatives, but Councillor Law's point is there could be
exactly
4. There is only 2, and there has only been 2 since the project started. And the Murahuku was added last year at the invitation of then Chair Noon.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I mean, even if you went co-governance and they said, but co-governance 50-50, which is controversial at the moment. This is what it would be. What's 2 of 7? You know, elected members get about 25% of the membership. You're joking. And this is our land and water plan.
Okay, so yep, we've got a question there, and yes, you're right, 7 permanently appointed members, 2 being ORC councillors, which is Councillor Noon and myself. Then we've got 2 Otako, they're not, 2 from Otako, and then one from Murihiku at the moment. But yeah, the question for me would be whether or not the chair of policy and science should be added from our council, really. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, look, my understanding is we've had this debate previously, and the words that are here aren't reflected in what was previously agreed. So my understanding is that all councillors basically have had the opportunity to attend, not in an observational capacity, but actually to attend the committee and to do their business. And so, for example, Kev, you know, out of that group, Kevin and I were asked, along with somebody else, okay, to sit on a communications group to talk about, this was last year, talk about how, you know, the general communications around the LWRP, you know, more than an observational. Certainly, you know, I can't imagine me being quiet at a meeting, you know, just as council laws. I mean, this is important. My understanding is, Michael, is that all councillors have the opportunity to turn up, and that on that basis, it's a different numbers game.
No. Here they are, terms of reference.
No, I realise that. So what I'm saying is that the terms of reference, in my view,
don't reflect to the.
So through the,
thank you.
Yeah, the terms of reference do reflect where we got to. Perhaps the word observational is incorrect. So these changes came about because information wasn't getting, for whatever reason, from the governance group to council. And so councillors wanted additional visibility. Since that time, we've had regular attendances from Councillor Mepham, Somerville, Councillor Wilson, except for the last two, you know, Councillor McCall, and those recordings are all made available as well on the Teams website. So, and Councillor Scott. So, and every councillor has been there at some point or other. I think Councillor Forth is there. So, it does say observational. However, they do actively take part. But the governance group is those 5 people that attend. They don't have any decision making, which is why the process, as per recommendation 2, is governance group, to workshops, to committee, to council, if that helps you. But maybe the word observational is wrong. However, the terms of reference do reflect where you got to last year, which is why you're seeing them now.
Sorry, Anita, could you help me with that? Did you just say they don't have any delegation for the governance?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Councillor Somerville, then Callaghan.
Look, I think Anita's just said most of what I was going to point out. I think it's important to go back to what it says, the purpose under section 2 there, and that second last paragraph. As Anita says, it's a council established working group, reports to this the ESP committee, and doesn't have a decision-making role, but as an advisory body to council. And in that sense, and looking at the purposes noted in those dots above that's I'm very comfortable with the makeup of the committee in view of those purposes.
Councillor Callaghan.
Yeah, I think that's fine, but putting aside the makeup of the committee, we have an indifference between what is in the terms of reference, what is happening on the ground. And at any time, we could fall back on the terms of reference, and actually the economically responsible council, whatever, it's just a total waste of time, because the terms of reference, say the committee, can really exclude that, and if that observational word remains. And so to get more effective input, we need to either change that observational word or add some other words that actually give more ability to have some input.
Yeah, and I'm picking up on an issue here, which is a worry about having input at the right level. I'm wondering whether the governance group is actually the problem, or it's how the governance group is operating at the moment, whereas actually governance group needs to be keeping a track of what's going in that project space. Also, having a look at, I guess, policy before it is formed up. But actually, the committee has an important role, I think, as well, and everyone has an important role in that. And to hear publicly as well, I guess, what we're debating and deciding. So perhaps we're focusing a lot on this group but we need to be focusing on, the committee and what its job is, I reckon. And what is this group's role? Probably quite a lot more limited than what it has been in the past.
Could I just add, so part of Matt's scope, he wasn't restricted on scope, so he's also looking at governance and structure. And so Richard suggested potentially we leave the terms of reference on the table until you've had Matt's report back, and then perhaps
That
that can
makes
shape
sense.
some decisions on what that looks like and the best way to move it. Matt was surprised that the governance group has basically two arms. One is a project management governance overview, and one is a policy overview, and that was unusual from his point of view. So he's at least seen that. He attended the last meeting, and I'm sure he'll have some feedback on that. So it may be worthwhile just laying the terms of reference on the
And
table.
we want to be we want this to succeed. We've got a short space of time before we're drafted, which is like we just found out, we knew this, 5 or 6 months. Do we want heaps of layers of complexity? Probably not. Probably what does this governance group need to be doing? Well, it needs to be quite focused on governance oversight, but actually the committee and that level needs to be where I think all of that uncomfortableness about we're missing out, people shouldn't be missing out, I don't think.
And the intention of using the committee for those papers and the workshops was for iwi's voice to be in the room with all of the committee members.
But I mean, that's not what I'm saying.
So the Environmental Science and Policy Committee workshops is for that.
So leaving those terms of reference on the table sounds like a really good plan at this moment. Matt Hawkins is he sort of completing quite soon, like perhaps at the end of next week?
So once we've had the project review, we'll make some observations on structure and including the governance group, then we will bring them back. So there'll be that information plus the discussion we've had today. Trying to find a way for this to move forward without double handling, over complicating, getting the right representation that gives a level of comfort to this table. And try and get that nailed at the same time as the project reporting and other things.
So if I can provide some details, we're expecting that Matt will report to governance group next week, and then should get to council in May. So I've just got to work out the dates of the papers due, but I'm sure Pim will give me a day's grace to write that paper if I need it before the May.
I wouldn't bet on it.
It.
Look, I think it is important for the council to get this stuff right.
Yes.
By the way, I have delegated to Richard the promise that I made to council actually, and I remember the conversation with Brian, particularly around good project management. But I have delegated to Richard, given that for the majority of the period of time in which the milestones are now being reported back to you and the project is going to be managed by you, Richard's going to be the chief executive. So but unfortunately, right now I'm the interim chief executive, and I have a responsibility for ensuring that we meet the promises that I've made around having a project plan, a well developed project plan delivered to you. I think Anita made a really useful point just now, or maybe it was Richard, but it was around the difference between
Policy and project management.
Exactly. It was around the governance group's responsibility, and I have to say, almost from day one, and I have attended most governance group meetings, I got confused around what I thought was a governance group responsibility for governing the project, as opposed to influencing significantly the actual policy development around the work in the Land and Water Regional Plan. And when I've been to governance group meetings, most of it's been presenting chapters and discussing those chapters around policy. So they're two quite distinct responsibilities, frankly. And I would have thought a governance group, irrespective of Matt's recommendation, I'm sure it'll be the same. A project governance group doesn't need to be very big. But actually the work that you guys are workshopping around that governance table, around what the policy looks like ultimately and what the chapters end up reading like, actually does need to include all of you.
Yep. Spot on.
And I think that's been the challenge. And I'm sure Matt will point that out too, but I just wanted to make that point.
Yep. Good. That was
Thank
a
you.
productive discussion.
Certainly
Councillor McCall.
Oh, yeah, just had my two, Bob. I think at the end of the day, we just comes down to what each group's role is and what each group's trying to achieve. So the governance group, the new councillors weren't here when it was initially set up, but the way I see it is the governance group is basically set up to ensure that we have mana whenua input into our plan, and it gives them the opportunity to give it in that governance group position. When I first read this, I also did the numbers similar to what Michael was doing and thought, crikey, because what it actually, if you actually read it literally, you've got to be careful with what you write, because what you write is taken literally. So you've got the 7 members, but you can have if there's 2 FMU units, they become members of the committee for whatever discussion you're talking about, which is a wee bit different as well. So I think at the end of the day, the system is that the governance groups gives mana whenua their input into the process, and a significant input into the process, and it's discussed with all councillors. So we just need to make a couple of changes around. I don't think anybody wants to be there just to observe, but to be able to partake. Because there's no real delegations involved, it's an information thing. It's, it's just information seeking. Though it then goes to, if required, it then goes to a working group, which is part of the Environmental Science and Policy Committee. So that's where you get into start getting to some making decisions with some weight behind them. And of course, on that committee, we have Iwi representative as well. So they get a share at that level, and then once it goes through the system, then it goes to the council for the final sign off. So I think if you actually look at each step, we just need to make sure that the words back up the way the steps operate.
Yep. Okay.
So I think it's a good way just to ensure we are having true partnership with our iwi partners.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the way forward on this. If the terms of reference are lying on the table until May, is that okay to say that? Yep, till the May meeting.
We're actually awaiting a report, aren't we?
Yeah,
So I'd like to
alongside
link-
the project.
Yeah,
plan.
link those two in a
He's
motion.
just said he's just finished his face-to-face interview this morning, so he's
Yeah.
been away as well. So
Yeah.
the intent is he will report to governance group next week, and then we'll take that report from governance group to council at the end of May.
What's his surname? Sorry, Anita?
Horton.
Corton.
Horton.
Not that Matt Horton.
I've never heard him
could
reference
be.
himself as the Matt.
It is
Horton,
very
but-
Matt
The one who runs the Mayor of Auckland's PR.
No, that's Hooton, that's Hooton.
Oh, who?
Okay, right.
Not the same.
Good
Yeah,
one,
that's right.
everyone. So yeah, there's 3, but then obviously the terms of reference incorporates the FM. Oh no, it doesn't. FMU's councillors is in a different place, isn't
No,
it?
no, it's in the.
It is. Oh
reference.
yeah, thanks. So we know anyway, we can kind of agree amongst ourselves that who's FMU councillors without it being formalised until we come back in May, which is soon. So that's good. Okay, we can probably do them one by one, might be easier, then we can make sure we've got the right wording. So the first one would be notes the updated revised milestones report for the proposed land and water regional plan. Somebody care to move that? Councillor McCall, seconded Councillor Mepham, all in favour? Aye.
Could I just have we mentioned there, I'd just
Sure.
like to mention FLIR's input into this. That was done, went back and forwards a few times, and to get to the middle ground between not enough information and too much. And I must say, so we're negotiating from Wellington. I was hoping you'd be here actually to see the golden world, but we're still target. Thank you very much for your input, and I think we landed on the right spot. So thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Yeah. Well done, everybody that was involved in giving up their time to create something simple. Filters down a lot of complexity to get to that point. So we really appreciate it. Recommendation 2, I think that remains unchanged. Yep, moved. Councillor Laws, seconded. Councillor Somerville, all in favour. Aye, against, carried. Third one approves the amended term. Oh no, sorry. Lays.
So moved.
Yeah, lays
The
on the.
Lays on the table. Yeah.
Oh, what have you got some words? Sorry.
Yeah, that the amended terms of reference lay on the table, awaiting the review of Mr. Matt Horton at the next council meeting.
Yep.
Yes, not Mr. Horton.
We'll just
Would be just fun if he was
we'll
Mr.
just
Horton.
let Trudy capture that. Yep, okay.
He's resigned.
Okay, so you're moving anyway, councillor Laws. Does somebody want to second that? Councillor McCall, all in favour? Aye, against, carried. We'll double check we've got this.
The Land and Water Regional Land Governance Group awaiting independent project review by National
For the next meeting.
For the next meeting.
Yeah, for the next council meeting. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Councillor Weir, this is the big moment. This is the notice of motion from. Oh, sorry. Yep, that was councillor Laws and councillor McCall. Yeah, and it was carried. Thank you. Right, so 9.1, we've got two notices of motion. The first is a request to join the Free Fares campaign, and it was received correctly from councillor Weir and signed. So councillor Weir, did you want to bring anything else to our attention?
Or just the right to reply at the end?
You can speak now if you'd like to give us any further information around this.
Yeah, sure.
So Madam Chair, just to clarify, he could move the motion, but he needs a seconder as well.
Yeah, he could do that and then you could speak.
Yeah, and then a right, yeah. from
And so,
there.
Yeah.
you need a seconder for your motion.
No, oh, sorry, yeah, good point.
Yeah,
He does.
So I'll
Yep.
move the first, the motion one that authorises the chief executive to sign on to the Free Fares campaign as a coalition member and release a press statement once the process is complete. Is there anyone to second that?
Councillor Somerville.
So as we've heard, from a number of our public forum speakers today, there's a lot of community support for the Free Fares campaign. I want to emphasize again, there's no costs or policy commitments or even really indications of commitments from us. It is just us putting our name down and sending them our logo to chuck up on their website. But it does give them just one more name in addition to 12 other councils, including GCFT. And 70 plus other organizations, charities and stuff around the country, just to push, well, broadly for the central government to invest more in public transport, but specifically as hope you all checked out the website and stuff, but for the government to make public transport free for tertiary students under 25s, community service card holders and disabled people or people on the total mobility scheme, funded through the annual budget most likely. So these groups represent a large portion of public transport users who rely on that service the most and are the most likely to not be able to afford it or a car and be deterred by costs. So doing this would help, transport inequality, especially families with kids, students, things like that. There was a trial in Bay of Plenty, which made buses free for children, increased ridership by 40% overall, because you've got parents that don't have to worry about paying for their kids anymore, etc. Would also help meet our climate change obligations, obviously, and reduce our transport emissions by getting people out of cars into buses. When public transport is free, trips made by public transport, trips are made by public transport that would otherwise be made by cars. There was, as Adam Curry earlier spoke to, the introduction of the Super Gold card gives us some reasonably decent statistics on this. As is also statistics overseas, but this is the best thing we have locally to I guess what we might expect, and that allows over 65s to travel free on public transport during off-peak hours. Saw 55% increase in public transport use by Super Gold carders and an estimated 1.4 million trips made by public transport that would have been made otherwise by car every year. Personally, I'd like to see free fares for everyone, but maybe that's conversation for another day. But I think it'd be a good first step for central government to take, and with no costs or commitments to us as a gesture, but a worthy gesture for our council to make, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, at this point, then we can have any questions or also, I don't know if there are questions for Elliot, and then we can have some debate. Yep. Maybe we'll start with questions. Are there any? No.
Are we not supposed to start?
Yep. Yep. Councillor Wilson.
I just understand, wondering if staff have had time to consider this and have any recommendations.
Okay.
Well, no, actually. I mean, I suppose I could add the issue that collecting fares is quite expensive for operators and always has been. You know, there's always been this challenge that fares are very low, that the cost of collecting fares actually almost outweighs the benefit of the fare itself. And we're sort of in that position now at ORC with fares being so cheap. So that's one issue. So there's an economic issue in terms of the fare box accountability and risk around drivers looking after fare boxes. It's always been a hassle for operators. That's one issue. I think in terms of the impact on demand and how we could service that demand for off peak, if it's only off peak, probably less of a concern. But there's always that what we call price elasticity, which means that if the price goes down, that demand is likely to go up, and it's hard to know. Although Elliot has pointed to some evidence around over 65, exactly what that increase in demand will be and whether it would mean having to put on significantly additional supply of buses. I haven't had time to get the team to analyse that.
Any other questions? No. Any debate then? Councillor Laws.
I think to the concept that there's no such thing as free lunch, we can probably have there's no such thing as free bus fare. And the concept that somehow this thing is free, as if it's miraculously conjured, doesn't quite work in reality there. In fact, it's really interesting. I did a bit of research for this earlier because the Minister of Transport, Michael Wood, got overruled by the Minister of Finance, Grant Robertson, as you're probably aware of the last year, because it related to the half-price bus fares that the government is currently funding, well, until June probably. And Treasury led the charge against extending that scheme, as you would expect Treasury to do, because that they calculated that the cost to the rate taxpayer, this is just for the half-price bus fares, was between $130 and $150 million a year. $130 to $150 million a year. Oddly enough, that does not equate to free. Those two are quite dissimilar concepts. In addition to which, we have had to, as part of that half-price bus fare, step into a financial gap and plug it with the ratepayers of Dunedin and Queenstown. And in essence, what we're doing is watching, again, something that's not free. We are transferring a subsidy and the cost of that subsidy to a majority of ratepayers and taxpayers in the Otago region to subsidise a minority. Now, I might have had some sympathy if you hadn't included tertiary students, but in actual fact, you have. The kind of people who are going to university or polytechnic now to gain a job or a diploma from which they will become professional employees, and I don't imagine will feel a scrap of empathy in the future in their professional careers for seeking to subsidise those who subsidised them when they were at university. That just doesn't seem their malheur. Students have always been selfish. I was one myself. And I can't imagine that they've changed. They haven't changed any time since. It's always been about, it's not a point of order, Alec. You can disagree with me in your reply, but it's not a point of order.
That's what language. Yeah.
Well, what's the?
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay, the rolling on the point of order is that we refrain from putting down a population of students based on one statistical person. Yep. Thanks.
Students have always been selfish. I mean, they were always protesting for improved bursaries when I was there. Nothing's changed since. Well, that's on the living. That's fair enough. Anyhow,
Okay,
moving on. Ironically, the more successful that Elliot and his cohorts would be in attracting people to the schemes, the more expensive it would be. So it wouldn't be costing hundreds of millions, no, tens of millions, it would be costing hundreds of millions, and the figure would go into 7 figures for Dunedin ratepayers. So this particular policy has policy implications, i.e. if it's a good thing, then it sets up expectations.
I might just double check that you are near your mic, Michael, because I think they're having a bit of trouble hearing on.
Oh, sorry, it's probably too far away.
And same with Elliot and Andrew, apparently.
But it has policy implications, expectation implications, but also the financial cost. Now, Elliot, with all due respect to you, I think this was, I have no difficulty with initiative at all. But in this particular case, I would have just stopped at the second motion you've got. What would something like this cost if we were going to do it? And what would be the policy? What would be the implications? What would be the passenger expectations? What would be the costs upon us? Can I tell you, in June, this finance minister, who's got a lot of problems filling his budget, is just about to get rid of the 25% excise tax on petrol. It'd be massively chaos in the 2 hours, 3 hours leading up to that falling off. But it's going to happen. And so will too go the half price bus fares. I think that we need to do an overview politically, policy wise, financial wise, passenger wise, expectation wise before we move. It would probably end up that particular piece of work going to the long-term plan, and then for us to determine at that stage whether or not. But I also don't like the idea of without consulting our communities. And I think for the minority of people in Dunedin, for example, who would gain from this policy, there would be a majority of people who would be paying for it. I'd like to also just point something out, and I always have to say this to people for Dunedin, so I hope I'm not going to get into point of order material again. But there are many of us in Otago who do not have access to public transport, who would find it risible that we are working to support students in Dunedin or a group of other people with their public transport needs when we are paying through the nose for our transport options in other parts of Otago. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we have a bit of a list of people. The next person is Councillor Forbes, then Councillor Malcolm, then we've got Councillor Scott and Wilson.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I'd just like to push back on this assumption that there is no free bus fare, and that in itself, of itself, is true, and there's no free car park outside your house either. But there are lots of inequities in our transport system, and many of them favour those without something. They cost those without something, favouring those with something. For example, said free car park outside your house, paid for by everyone, favours those with cars at the collective expense of those without cars. And there are many examples of this. I don't only have a few minutes here, so I'm not going to go into them, Michael, but if you'd like me to provide them, they're all over my Twitter feed, help yourself. But so those collective expenses need to be considered when you're putting this huge thing as there's no free bus fare. Well, actually, there's free car parks. Anyway, putting that aside, other costs and subsidies are not fairly visited either. For example, the contribution of those who ride the buses to those that don't ride the buses through saved carbon, through saved car parking places, through all sorts of things. Actually, the same goes for those who cycle or walk. They save costs for those that don't do that, not just through saved carbon, cleaner air, but also through improved health outcomes. Everyone that catches a bus also walks. There are so many ways, there's so many flaws in that free bus argument, Michael. That's all I wanted to point out here. I will be supporting your motion, but the question I have, Elliot, is that this free, what does it actually do? You're saying it's just an intention. I would absolutely have the intention of a free, a no cost to the user, the person that rides the bus. I totally agree with that concept, as you well know, for many reasons, mostly for climate change, but also for congestion, for wellness, for clean air, for many, many things. for equity, for the 16-year-old to be able, the 15-year-old to be able to travel before they have their license, for safety for a 10-year-old. For all those reasons, I support where you're going with this. But how does this actually make anything happen? I don't know if he's allowed to answer that, but I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, that's true. We've missed the questioning part. We're on to, thank you. Have you finished your?
I have finished. It was a speech in the end.
Great, thanks.
I needed to respond to that because that winds me up.
Thanks. Councillor Malcolm.
There you go.
Oh, sorry. Kevin, are you talking or ready to talk?
No, I'm just finding my mute button. Got me?
Oh, great. Yep.
Good. Good. Yeah, look, I'm not comfortable with signing up to this group. And look, I would be far happier that we get into a debate as to what the ORC actually wants to achieve with their public transport and meeting government goals, meeting community goals, and our whole public transport space. So I think we need to actually have that strategic conversation as part of our long-term plan to decide what we actually want out of our public transport before we start joining groups that support specific parts of it. So that's where I'd like to channel our energies. So at the stage.
Thanks, Councillor Malcolm. Councillor Scott.
Cool. I'll just quickly say that, yes, I believe in public transport, but in relation to this motion, I have got an open mind and I wish to be further informed. I look forward to the feasibility study. I am supportive of the feasibility study. I'm actually happy to second the following motion, but for this particular point, I will await that feasibility study outcome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I admire the direction and the intent of some of these ideas and of the three pairs, and that if it's about carbon emission reduction, brilliant. If it's about equity, brilliant. But the problem is it's leaping into a solution that suits one part of the community, but not the Otago way. And our role here is to be strategic. We need to lift this up and say, what are we trying to get out of a public transport network? We've actually got a regional passenger transport plan that indicates some of those things. And by taking this as the solution, we're actually rewriting our own strategy without any of that process that would be that Michael's referred to, that we normally consult on changing its strategic direction. We're very clear in there about equity issues and about the funding model. It may be wrong, but let's have that discussion in a strategic place, not by joining up to a group and showing a preference to an organisation's intent. But we also highlight there a regional transport network, and if that's going to be free, good luck. But actually, I want to see what that work is before we jump into one action. We need to be much higher and lift this up, not predetermine anything. I think it's wonderful that we've brought this up in Ruperta, because it's not that long ago that Andrew Noon and I sat around the council chamber with a whole lot of people with really big equity issues about health, wanting a medical bus service to Dunedin, who can't sell in Ruperta and buy in Dunedin, so they could move to deal with those issues. It's a huge trap. And it was a room talk down at the council chambers of all of these people with different needs and talking about children's access to sport, about what they need in the passenger transport service. We're not even near exploring that, which I think is really, really sad. It's articulated in the regional transport, passenger transport plan, all of those other desires, not to mention the ones in Cromwell. So this is jumping into a solution without the higher level strategy, at best of intent. I would support something that went along the lines that council staff report the long-term plan consideration on the effectiveness of the regional passenger transport plan and any cost-effective recommendations that may improve passenger transport, usage, reduce carbon emission transport, improve transport network efficiency, amongst other things. But this is going much lower down and then second guessing all of those answers. So regretfully, with all the best of intent of the motion, I get it, but I can't support it given that context.
Thank you, Councillor Sunderville.
Thanks. Well, look, naturally, there is a financial cost in providing free public transport, but there's also really many benefits, and we've heard about those in terms of making our towns and cities more livable. There's the equity issues and, of course, in reducing carbon emissions. Joining this campaign, I think, raises the issue publicly, and it's really important to keep this issue in front of the public and in front of the government. And I see that as the point of joining this now. Thanks. And I
Thank you. Councillor Noon.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I don't see this as a radical move. So I absolutely support the notice of motion. I think in terms of our overall objective for passenger transport across Otago, and I appreciate that not all of Otago is served with passenger transport, but in our RPTP, that's certainly language in that document talks about a much wider services across the region. It talks about the connectivity for all the benefits that have already been mentioned. So with that in mind, and also if you look at the two existing areas which have passenger transport, Dunedin and Queenstown, and a little bit further afield than both of those locations, we're also looking for about a 40% mode shift to be achieved over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And to achieve that, these are the sorts of, I believe, initiatives that need to be in play to achieve it. And the target market with this particular campaign is the under 25s, the people with community services cards and tertiary students. And with particular reference to the under 25s and the tertiary students, if you are encouraging those sector groups to use passenger transport at a young age, my view is that, you know, that culture or acceptance or embracing passenger transport at that age, you've got them for life. And I think that's absolutely critical. So I will support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Noon. Councillor Kelleher.
Thank you. Good on you, Elliot, for bringing it. It is worthy to start the discussion. I'm sorry I cannot support this motion, but it's not saying I won't support the next motion. I think the problem here is what was potentially signing ORC up to is, in my mind, the motion is too vague. But also it's a total change of policy where we have to date required the community, either the closer in community under targeted rates and the wider community, to accept the structure and that a certain number of those using buses will pay. So when we say we would then sign up to as broad a statement or a motion as this, that we support, the LRC supports free fares if someone else pays, I think is a step too far at this point without understanding the full implications, because if someone else is paying, someone else is calling the shots, and we would need to understand those shots before we were to then agree free fares is the way to go. It could be that centralising buses across New Zealand is the way to go. When you look at how it works for school buses, and I'm heavily supportive of school buses, then I'd like to see that continued in the past. As we move towards the greater need for mode shift, all of that, I think we need to look at it collectively across the country as opposed to supporting one group. And I get that the good intent of that one group, so I'm not trying to knock that one group who are have presented to us today, have given us some good detail, but I'm just, I can't support this motion, I'm sorry, purely because of the stance it takes for the LRC itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Meekum.
Congratulations, Elliot, for bringing this. It's the sort of discussion we should be having around this table. My personal view on this is that I think that public transport in both Queenstown and Dunedin should be taken care of by those district councils. I don't think the Otago Regional Council should be involved in public transport in those areas. Although I do have a vote at this table, I don't think I can commit to anything which doesn't have any kind of financial justification and financial investigation behind it. So I can't support the first motion, but I can support the second motion.
Councillor McCall.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Ellie, for bringing this to your attention and putting it in front of us. I think I do have some doubts around signing up to the group as to what commitments we're signing ourselves up for, be they moral commitment or just an inverted commitment to do it. I do, however, I don't think at the end of the day, all we're doing is signing up with an expectation, giving an expectation that as a council, we support the reduction of emission at source emission, carbon emissions, and that we're looking at actual ways that we can actually make climate difference. We're not actually committing the council, and at the end of the day, we don't have a moral. At the end of the day, I think we need to have a moral standing whereby we're either wanting to be active in the climate change or whether we're just going to want to sit back and wait for somebody else to prove it to us. So I think this is another opportunity that we can probably put our toe in the water and just say we are supporting initiatives towards climate change, especially like I'm a big one for New Zealand Inc. So when you get New Zealand Inc. gets the benefit, New Zealand Inc. pays. And so, okay, so it needs to be a shared model. And it's all you, and at the end of the day, we're not making any life or death decisions here. We're just making a commitment that we're going to work as a council towards actually making real on the ground change to our carbon emissions. So I'll support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. Yeah.
Madam Chair, which might make you, I've listened to the debate and I've changed my vote.
Yeah, okay, I have listened to the debate as well. There's been some great points on both sides, and I think some real interest in discussing what are the best approaches to getting people on buses. There's been an absolute impetus, lift and impetus around this council table in terms of improving the service that we provide and all of the reasons why we would do that as well, and who would benefit from that. Who would benefit would be a lot wider than just those that are in Dunedin or in Queenstown and are in the demographics that we're talking about here. So initially I thought that I might not support this for some of the reasons like Councillor Mepham has talked about in terms of, you know, we could put more meat around this, but I think sending a signal at this point and not always being the council that waits, that sits back, that doesn't signal to our community that we're serious about public transport. I think Councillor Noon, you actually made some very good points there. I listened to what you said actually, and that helped me change my mind to getting behind this motion. Thank you. So I guess probably a division at this point would be worthwhile. Sorry, you want your point. Sorry, yes, that's, I did promise you that. And you have that right. Yes, a right of reply.
Address a few of the points made, just hopefully sway maybe one or two more of you. Some concerns about the financial justification. We don't have, you know, our staff going out and financial justifying this, but the justification is out there. If you go and look at it, by academic studies, transport research groups, and we've also got real world examples as well as proof of the effects of these. Some of the concerns about the half price transport costing 150 million, orders of magnitude less than the excise tax and the cost of, you know, cars in our street and stuff. And as Pim said as well, that there's costs in charging. So making it free for some people takes away some of those costs as well. So you recoup some of that. And there may be increased costs in putting more buses on for more people, but do we not want more buses? Do we not want more people using our buses? Is that not the goal of our the mode shift we're after? We would all pay for it if it was, you know, funded in the annual budget, but I think we would all benefit in a number of ways. And as a number of councillors pointed out, there are holes in our public transport networks, particularly in rural areas. And I think the onus is really on us, not to let that be an excuse to not commit to more public transport, but to use that as a justification for extending our public transport network into those communities. And I would be thrilled to work with the entire council to make that happen. I'll brush past for contempt for specific demographics. But as Lexi said,
just accurate observation.
Okay, thank you. Elliot,
was,
continue.
what it actually does do by us signing this on, and I agree. To be honest, it doesn't do much. It's not a radical, action plan or a policy or anything, but it gives the campaign and the coalition just that little bit more weight to pressure central government. The first council to sign on must have thought the same thing and had these same discussions, but they did sign on, and now there are more than a dozen councils that have signed on, and 70 other organisations around the country, from church groups, charities, student associations, etc. And I think I would love to see us be the next. There were a few concerns around the proper process, chance to discuss something, but we're not saying this is the solution to our public transport problems, nor is it a strategic decision, I don't think. Obviously, you know, policy decisions need to go through processes, but this is just for us to decide if we support this kaupapa. We can, you know, read the data and make up our own minds as individuals, and if you think this campaign is not a worthy campaign, I totally understand and respect that. But I personally think it aligns with our vision as a council, and I'd like to see our council say the same thing by supporting this motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, division then.
We're treating safely through you really on Thursday. Doing very well. Okay, so.
Yeah, one at a time. They're separate motions, yeah. Separate papers essentially as well. That's right, sorry, you got all the complexity on day one. That's right.
So we have councillor Forbes, councillor Callagher, councillor Lewis, councillor Malcolm,
No.
councillor McCall,
Or
councillor Nepham, councillor No, councillor Scott,
Oh,
councillor Somerville,
yes.
councillor Weir, councillor Wilson, against, councillor Robertson, 4.
7-5.
Yeah, 7-5.
Correct, yep. Okay, declare the motion 1 then 7-5. Okay, motion number, notice motion 9.2. Which is, actually, we've received it there and you've got that written, but I think councillor Weir, you may have a slight amendment that you want to move.
Screen if you would like. Just one moment.
Not sure if, can we do that with
I think it needs
the
to be
fact that he's,
yeah.
because he submitted in it. You can, you've looked.
Setting orders for option C, which means that we can and there is motion.
But it has to be.
But it's got to be tabled first.
So
Right, thanks.
I guess I've got to move
The
to this first motion.
complex one with a notice of motion, so thanks for that. Yeah. So yeah, whether you have to have a mover for this one for first, obviously, and seconded. Somebody care to second this one then, just for, thank you, councillor Mepham.
Well, I guess before we get started talking about the wording of the motion, I want to move an amendment. That if people aren't a fan of, we can just go back to the original one, but just from conversations with staff and stuff. Wanted to almost broaden this a bit. So the wording would be, and I'm not sure if that you've got it there, but I'll just read it out.
Here, I'm just waiting for Liz to look at the screen.
Yeah. Do you want me to read it out in the meantime?
Actually, yes, so, you'd like to read it?
Yeah, sure.
You've got it there, Alan?
Yeah, I've got it here. So it's just changing it slightly to request a report be drafted for use in relevant LTP discussions and decisions on the feasibility of various free public transport schemes, such as free off-peak travel, free weekend travel, free travel for certain demographics, and universal free transport, and their respective potential costs and benefits.
Can you put the word passenger in with travel, please?
Yeah, where?
Anywhere and everywhere. It has to be passenger transport we're talking about.
This is public transport,
It's not here, but,
Public
you've got, you put it up the top, sorry.
Yeah.
I could miss that bit.
but I can add public transport on that last transport. Yeah, that's fine.
So
Sweet.
what's universal travel?
Oh, as in like free run.
You mean free for everyone in Dunedin and Queenstown?
Everywhere that we have public transport, whenever we in our 10-year plan, yeah.
Oh, so you are just, so,
Rightio, yep. Okay. We're just dealing with the amendment, yeah, then we can have questions about
Need a
it.
seconder for the amendment as well.
Yeah, so we're just making sure that we've captured that.
Okay.
Um,
It's just changing so currently it's just talking about off-peak free travel, right? The motion. This is just saying that we'd want to look at a range of options, whether that's free off-peak travel or free weekend travel or.
Motion, I think.
Sorry.
Weekend is off peak.
request the report we draft.
But yeah, free travel for certain demographics and universal free public transport. It's just expanding it to a few more other options. Yeah, I've seen that through. It's we're just getting it on the screen.
So
I can-
problem with screen
I can send
sharing
an
at the
email if
moment.
that's also easier.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just seeing if I can send it to Liz for screen sharing.
Oh, you've got that original.
Yeah. I'll just send it now then.
Madam Chair, can I just clarify with the mover?
Yeah.
So let me get this right.
Mhm.
It's everything from free travel for everybody
I can do it now.
down to
Okay, cool.
free travel for off-peak and weekends.
Yeah.
So it's
Or
sort of,
free-
and the financial options for
Yeah.
each of those,
Yeah, and just sort of looking at what the costs would be and what the benefits might be for those different options.
where public transport is currently offered.
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's up on the screen behind you, Zenia. The original proposed motion.
Having a second minute.
Okay.
Yeah, but if people are,
I've got a question.
yeah.
Start in the
Just
middle.
send that.
It's not being in the word of the plan, what's the impact is this on our staff?
Well, I mean, there's a cost to doing an economic study that looks at costs and benefits. And the more complicated the costs and benefits and the more options that you're looking at, the more expensive that study will be. So there is, I would suggest that the amended motion is going to be more complex than the original motion.
Follow-up question there is, should this be backed up to a slightly higher level for consultation in a long-term planning process? If it's not, if the panel would be. if it's not
Well, we're not going to
easy
be able to do
work
an economic evaluation of this sort of overnight, and
No, it's not.
we'll have to find somebody who can do the work. Almost by definition, it would make more sense to include this out of the LTP process, even though there's a cost involved.
That's the intention, yeah.
Maybe we need to have something like that.
So then
Maybe
maybe
the original
does
motion,
say-
the original motion certainly said that, actually.
For use in relevant LTP discussions, but if there's a way to work that in easier, I'm
Well-
happy to amend it. Yeah, my understanding talking to staff is that it would sort of just fit in relatively smoothly with what the transport team was already working on in
And it
terms
might
of
be that-
presenting
That's
us.
my question really.
Yeah.
How hard is this?
Sorry, I was just looking at what I need to do for this amendment, which is quite challenging. Anyway, councillor Callaghan.
Well, just following that though, because that is a concern to me is around the potential workload or work we are asking of staff in either the less emotion or the greater emotion. That the motion on the table at the moment says to inform the relevant LTP decisions. That means it has to be here quite rapidly, as opposed to being something we would do as part of our LTP.
So look, the LTP decisions which you will make around prioritisation for where to spend ratepayers' money is going to happen mostly between now and Christmas.
Yep.
And so this piece of work I would suspect, given that I'm not aware that we have any staff member who would be able to do this very easily, frankly. The likelihood is that we'd bring somebody in to do this piece of work, and I'd expect to do that between now and Christmas or whenever you need to be done by.
Well, that's exactly the context of my question. Like, is it in asking for this, I think you're answering the question. You're not saying you can say to the transport team, this can be popped out overnight. This could take months and it may need consultants, and given that we are trying to aim for staff's budgets and under Autumn risk, we're under a lot of pressure that way. Understanding, are we talking 50K? Are we talking 100?
No, I think this is, look, I've done a bit of work myself in the past. I think you're talking 5K for a piece of work like this.
Okay, cool, thank you.
It's I shouldn't say this, but it's very small compared to the amount of money that we spend on public transport at ORC.
Right.
Come on.
Okay. Anyone else got any questions on the amendment?
On the
Or-
amendment, on
Yeah.
pieces of stuff on the program.
On this
To the-
particular, okay, so it's on this matter, yep, okay, councillor Wilson.
So this work stream would be over and above the other work that's already indicated as a regional, in the regional passenger transport plan for regional services. And what you get priority for that work.
That's not my decision, that's council's decision, but if you ask for this work to be done as part of the next 6 months of work in developing LTP, then it'll get done. Work will get done, but it's not necessary that I need to use existing staff to do it. I think my expectation is I'll just bring somebody in to do this piece of work as a project.
So the regional passenger transport plan already talks about, and we have given motions in the past about prioritising regional, extending the transport services, whether it's from to Queenstown or Wanaka or Alexandra or Belcourt to Dunedin.
Yep.
Where is that piece of work? Because it will have a bearing on this. And also priorities that the staff can deal with, because I'm just trying to weigh up whether supporting one of these, this motion or Gazan, that other work, which is, I think in my mind, equally important.
No, I think it's, so the council wants that work done, and that might be a cost benefit study too, in terms of doing a bus.
It's already in the priority work.
Exactly, that work will get done over the next 6 months as well.
What, have I got a guarantee that that work has been undertaken? Because I'm not sure of this. but
I'm not
it's
sure
clearly
that it is, because I'm not over it. I haven't spoken to Lorraine or any of my staff about that. But my expectation is that we would be looking more widely, and if you're telling me that it's already on the work plan for the next 6 months as part of the LTP discussions, then again, we'll get that work done as well.
Councillor,
I
sorry,
think we'll need to bring a consultant in for that piece of work too.
councillor Noon.
For the exact reason Kate has raised, I feel that this is slightly premature in light of an LTP focus over the next 6 or 7 months or whatever it might be. It seems to me that we would need to prioritise whether this is a feasibility study for what Elliot has outlined, or feasibility study for other potential, might be environmental projects or whatever. I don't know, but I think this discussion needs to be had along with all the other priorities that we've got, and then we will land on, as Kate says, well, we've already got commitments in the RPTP. Is that work on track? Is it due to be completed over the next 12 months or whatever? So we need to understand the bigger picture, whether it's to do with PT or it's to do with all our other environmental focus going forward.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, sure. Look, I don't disagree with what Andrew's just said, but nevertheless, on the previous motion, we made moves towards joining this Free Fares Coalition. And I think to do justice to that, we need to support this motion After saying all of that, I agree with all this other periphery stuff as well. My personal thing is, I actually want to have real time on all our buses and turn up at every bus stop and need to know that the next bus is going to be there in 10 minutes. Oh no, it's going to be 9 minutes. It's going to be 8 minutes. You know, so that's my key focus. And I'd hate to think that this type of stuff would consume all that type of stuff as well. I think that was Kate's point. But nevertheless, I go back to the start. Alex, you know, successfully moved the motion in the previous. And I think to do justice to that, to understand clearly, you know, the implications and so forth, we need to support this. Well, it's not, it's about various free public transport schemes.
We were having questions. We can, we've actually got what the well, isn't it that we're on the amendment and that's what it is, I think. Yep. So Councillor Malcolm's got his hand up as well. So if he's got any questions.
Yeah, I have got a question. Is this not to me, and I just want this clarified, to me, this looks very much like a motion revolving around Dunedin and Queenstown. Is this motion to include bus services or potential bus services in Balclutha, in Milton, in Lawrence, in North Otago, all the Waitaki district? You know, where do we actually, where is this going? Because I think this, as Councillor Noon said, should be back to a let's prioritise at our long-term plan stage. I'm not against the sentiments of it, but I just think this is, unless this is specific to Dunedin and Queenstown where we have existing services, I think it's far too big a piece of work to go ahead with unless we've got a strategy. So could I have an answer to where is this? Is this Queenstown and Dunedin only?
I would think that it would extend to wherever we're looking at public transport in the future in the long-term plan. So I understand that is quite a broad piece of work. And yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense of this amendment and its people's feel for the amendment around the table. I'm happy to move back to the original proposed motion if it's not the desire there.
Well, further to that answer then, a follow-up would be to the CE. If that, in fact, this is to cover all our transport or all our potential transport bases and services, how does a $5,000 budget then fit into the feasibility study of a transport service in Oamaru, a transport service in Balclutha?
No, look, I agree with you completely, Kevin. Economic evaluations are complex, and so the simpler the question is, the easier it is to do the work. The original motion was not a hard piece of work. That's why I suggested maybe that number of hours that might equate to $5,000 or thereabouts, in terms of a bit of analysis by an economist probably, or an accountant. The amended motion looks much more complex to me, and if you wanted to include additional services such as the cost benefit of running public transport between towns as opposed to within towns, then that's additional work, and you'll end up building up to a much bigger project.
And Chair, with your indulgence, so the original motion then, again, Dr. Byron, would be based on the analysis of the two existing services that we actually have.
Yeah, just in terms of the difference it would make having free fares.
Yeah.
Councillor Weir.
Amendment to the motion. We can just revert back to the original motion.
Yep. Okay, so we got the original motion up there.
Just had a request to include public transport in the wording.
Okay, we've had plenty of questions, I think, and we've cleared that up to it's the original motion. We can go into debate then. Councillor Laws.
I guess the difficulty that I've got with this is the underlying concept that there's something wrong with the private motor car. And this rather bizarre notion that extends that somehow public transport is going to solve the greening of the world, well, the non-greening of the world, or at least allow us to do our jobs when it comes to carbon emissions. It seems to me that the transition from petrol or fossil fuel vehicles to hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles is proceeding very well. In actual fact, you might argue that that transition is being led by, ironically, the wealthier and by the middle class. And the reason for that is because they can afford a new hybrid vehicle or a new electric vehicle, even with the subsidy that's there. And that those kind of costs are out of the reach of lower cost people or people who are struggling with their budget, who ironically will be forced to continue to use fossil fuels. So the idea is, well, you're going to come out of that and you're going to go into a public transport scenario. And I think that those who argue for this public transport concept are fundamentally misreading that New Zealanders love their cars, that they're not going to abandon the culture of the car in the country. We are proportionately the second highest car purchasing and using capital of the capita in the world, users of the world, and that we will transition into hybrid and electric, and that transition will be reasonably quick. So I've always only ever seen public transport, or this concept of public transport, as some sort of interregnum step before all of New Zealand's car fleet, and certainly all of our public transport fleet and our transport fleet in general, eventually electrified. And that process is happening as we talk now. So the market is working. The second is, this is a very selfish motion. It immediately excludes everybody who doesn't live in Dunedin and Queenstown. And I must say, I don't notice a huge clamour of people coming out of Queenstown saying, give us free bus fares and off-peak free travel and things like that. This seems to be coming particularly from one particular demographic. And indeed, in the amendment, that is made explicit. It is about certain demographics and favouring them over and advantaging over others. Can I just say to the move of this, try being a middle class person, struggling to pay your mortgage, increasing interest rates, you've got kids, and you're trying to feed them with food prices at 20% a year. You know, the people who aren't in the groups that you identify, but whose daily worry about their finances as much as any student ever will, because they've got lives dependent upon the financial decisions that they make, which is why I'm so strong on regional council rates and territorial authority rates. They're the ones who are actually at the forefront of this cost of living crisis. So the idea that we would ever think of favouring certain demographics is completely wrong when we misidentify that there are many in the lower middle class and middle class right now who will go to sleep tonight worrying about how they're going to pay their bills. And we're part of that problem. And we're about to become even more a part of it. And finally, I get irritated, and I've been extremely irritated in the last 7 years, sitting around this table about public transport being a Dunedin focus in particular. In Queenstown, it's different. It's related to the tourism industry, and it's basically about moving them. And they've also put the town in the wrong place, and they've got a small bridge that takes them from the major subdivisions into town. But in Dunedin, it's about give me more. And no, Kevin's raised it. Waitaki, Balclutha, most of Central Otago, no public transport at all. My daughter has to pay $35 to travel the 55 kilometres from Cromwell to Wanaka to go to her social event. Okay, $35 one way. That ain't subsidised. That's not half cost. That is the cost that they are paying every day, which is one of the reasons why Alexa talks about every 16-year-old in Central Otago, the first thing they do when they get to 16 is get a licence and get a car. There's a reason for that, because that's the only way that they can travel. There is no public transport option, and we've never even considered one for them. And yet here we are, right here, going, oh, let's worry about Queenstown and Wanaka, Dunedin and Queenstown first. So I can't support this. primarily because it is based upon advantaging a very few when so many people currently are facing difficulties and when so many people in Otago are excluded from public transport. When you put us all on the agenda, when you put 100% of the residents here and there's some demonstrable concern from this table, then I'll take you seriously. But up until now, you just want more a special privilege.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I couldn't disagree more with many of Councillor Law's points, but I'm still going to agree with them on the outcome, which is slightly frustrating. But but the reason, look, apart from the words public transport not being in this paragraph, I find certain in the motion. This is prioritising us getting involved in the transport system when there's cycling and walking that we haven't even talked about, which actually have added health benefits that we could be talking about. It again goes down to the solution being one thing, rather than us lifting ourselves up strategically. And it's actually in the RPTP, we've got to look at regional services. We've got to look at those other things that are getting in the way of us getting and being connected better. Now, I really agree with the sentiment in many ways that you're expressing, Councillor Ware, but I can't agree with it because it's too low down finding the solution, and it's picked the solution before we've actually done our strategic job that we have to do, that we've already got in the RPTP. It's prioritised something well before that we're ready to do that. And for that reason, until we've had the much bigger picture analysis, I can't say this is the solution. And sorry, I feel gutted that I can't support it. Had it been more generic, let's go and find out the solutions, then I could have been a lot better and a lot happier helping.
Anyone else? Councillor Somerville, then Scott, then Forbes.
Thanks. Well, look, reducing transport carbon emissions is one thing. The regional council has some significant influence on through promoting public transport. So we should do whatever we can there. I guess what's important to me is that for our long-term plan deliberations, we have the information that we need in order to make good decisions and inform the public in that decision making too. And there seems to be, well, it looks as though the transport team are clearly working on various things leading up to that already, but this would be one more piece of information to feed into that to make use of. So I think I'm very happy to support this.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, cool. Just briefly, the reason I changed my vote on the last debate was at the end of the day, we could all do our feasibility studies, but I think instinctively we know that there's a lot about these motions that's right, whether it's climate change or socially, that it really hits the spot. And we talk about whether we should, as a council, be reactive or whether we should be proactive. And I saw that as an opportunity for once and for all to move forward proactively for the future and for our kids. In relation to some of the comments that Michael's made, for example, people using cars. Yes, a lot of people are going to continue to use cars. I'm not going to argue about that. But what this does, it actually rewards those that don't use cars, which have so many benefits socially, climate change, so forth, in relation to those families that are going through difficult economic situations. Well, what this actually does is if you've got a family of three, for example, all three kids, or a family with three kids, all three kids are going to get free public transport. It's actually going to, maybe not in your area. I'm still trying to scratch my head about why why it's so imperative to spend $35 to go from Cromwell to Wanaka, but that's another debate. Yes, electric cars and hydrogen cars will be a huge part of the future, but what this does is about the immediate gains. Public transport, we've got the system, let's make it work. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Forbes.
Okay, I think we need to skill ourselves a little bit on what electric car transition may and may not do. And one of the many, I've just sent some links to help with that, because there are many things that transition won't do. And electric cars are not a panacea. So let's get past that. We know, and the evidence all around the world, I've also given you a link to one of the great transport planners of the world, a man called Brent Tadone, who used to be the chief planner of Vancouver City. And he tells us he's got huge quantities of evidence of why we need mode shifts. So hopefully that's enough. We don't have to go into that again. So if we need public transport right across our region, we need to we need to accept that as a council, so that we provide for public transport for those teenagers in Cromwell that need to get to wherever they need to go, for the teenager in Balclutha that needs to get where they need to go, and equally for the person that lives in Balclutha and needs to get to the hospital in Dunedin, etc. We need public transport everywhere. We don't get public transport by saying we haven't got it. We get public transport by doing something about it and moving through the processes and building on what we already have. We now have two pretty good for small places public transport systems in our region. We build from that base. We build outwards. I've long advocated for public transport between Alex and Queenstown, and Alex and Wanaka, and I know people have done that from Palmerston to Dunedin, Balclutha to Dunedin as well. This we need to move on, and we need to know some of the costs doing so. We need to work towards it, and whatever we can do, let's start doing it. And this is something we can do, and it doesn't look terribly expensive. And I thank Elliot for bringing it, and it really wholeheartedly supported.
Thanks, Alexa. Yep, Councillor McCall.
Yes, thank you.
I just think we're debating a whole lot of stuff that's not even in the motion. This actually is not a debate about public transport or regionality of public transport. This is actually a debate about doing a report to see what the effects are if we don't charge people to ride on our buses during off-peak times when there's nobody riding on the buses, but they're still going round and round in circles. So at the end of the day, the bigger picture, at the end of the day, we're not here right now to debate that great bigger picture. It's just a simple analysis to see where things sit. I think we at the end of the day, a report. I've got a couple of wee things. Do we do a report now that we're going to do in the next 6 months or so that will actually inform will inform the long-term plan, or do we actually want to take it to the next step and include it in as part of the long-term plan, so we actually set aside proper funding to review the whole transport system, free fares, routes, etc., etc. So I would just like, if there's a commitment from the CE that it can be done relatively inexpensively without tying up staff that we don't have, what have we got to lose? We're not making any big groundbreaking decisions here. So, and I think the CE mentioned that at the beginning, and then unless you want to retract. So I think at the end of the day, we can't make decisions without knowing. It's not about, this is not about free fares. This is about what would it cost to entice people onto our buses when they're running around with spare seats.
Anyone else then? Oh, sorry, Councillor Malcolm.
Well, yeah, just a question to the CE, regardless if this is 5,000 or 10,000, and if it's being done in this financial year, what budget will it come out of, and what service will we drop to accommodate that budget? Because we are trying to get a budget that balances.
Well, if I could get the work commissioned before the end of June, then it would come into this year's budget. My gut feeling is it's more likely to come into the first half of next year, and that we'll have to find the money within the annual plan, and actually ultimately the new chief executive might want to consider that cost, but it doesn't seem to me Kevin, that this is the way that this motion is worded, this is a relatively small piece of work at a relatively tiny cost when compared to the cost of public transport for the ORC.
And I guess the cost of developing the long-term plan, which will have, it's a significant project in its own right and does cost councils to do. Yeah. Right.
Cost
Any other?
cost ratepayers.
That's right. Yep. Anybody else then? Councillor Weir in a writer reply.
Again, I'll just address some of the points I heard and concerns and hope of swaying a few more of you towards us. Electric cars, they're great, but as the name suggests, they require electricity. Car culture is not, an immovable force, just as things like smoking weren't, and public transport has benefits beyond just our carbon output as well. The equity, the benefits for the way our cities actually work. If Councillor Laws would like to work on extending public transport into the communities he talks about, I'd love to work with them on that. Active transport is very important as well. I fully agree. I don't quite see how that sort of absolves us from not doing other things. And I'm not claiming this step is the solution or a panacea, and neither was the last motion. But I do think it's a small step in the right direction. We want as much reasonable info as possible when we're looking 10 years into the future about transport planning. As I understand it, this will be able to fit into the work that the public transport team is doing to prepare us with information and options around our L2P discussions around public transport. Beyond getting more bus drivers and making our system more reliable, which understandably is our immediate focus, this, I think, will help us explore a range of potential ways that we can make public transport more attractive to the public and encourage the mode shift that we know we need in our cities and towns. In the short term, and we've got massive delays at peak times for commuters at the moment, I think we should be exploring every option in alleviating that. Let's be proactive. Let's back our words on climate change, on equity, on transport, and commit to this simple first step of finding out more. Thanks.
Councillor Weir, on the I think Councillor Wilson raised it before, but your motion says free off-peak travel. So yeah,
we can change the wording.
Public transport is
fine.
Yeah, is a
And I think,
suggestion.
it was suggested that we remove the transport team and just it doesn't need to be assigned to anyone.
Okay.
Yes, someone.
Yeah.
CEO is
that. Yeah. I think that's
Well, yeah, be a change of CEO too.
What is the change?
Transport team's probably all right, isn't it?
It is actually.
Yeah.
Just leave it as
Yeah.
transport, yes.
Yeah, and then it's fairly obvious that it's not off-peak travel. So it could be walking even or for, yeah. Yeah. Public transport. Mm. Yeah.
We can test the
If you're happy with that.
I think the council understands.
Yeah, the intent.
The intent.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So shall we call for a division then?
Right, so Councillor Forbes.
Aye.
Councillor Callaghan.
Aye.
Councillor Laws.
No.
Councillor Malcolm. Councillor Malcolm.
No.
Oh, thank you. Councillor McCall. Councillor Meckham.
Yes.
Councillor Noon.
Aye.
Councillor Scott.
Yes.
Councillor Somerville.
Yes.
Councillor Weir. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Robertson.
Yes.
So that is 9 for, 2 against, 1 abstain.
Okay, declare the motion won. And at this point, we have got afternoon tea there, I think. I think I saw Richard spotting the afternoon tea over there, yeah. So we need to actually formally adjourn, so we actually need a mover and a seconder for that. Okay, councillor Noon, second councillor Ware, all in favour, aye, against, carried, and we will adjourn for just till 4 o'clock, thanks. Thanks. I'll declare the meeting open again, and we're up to 10.1 chairperson's report, which can be taken as read, but just if you didn't notice, I tried something different in here today, which was whether or not you're interested in a policy that enables the council to support funding applications for external parties. Could be an individual, could be a agency, or even a business for something that supports our strategic priorities as a council. We quite often get these, and generally we'll have enough time to send them round all councils to say, hey, look, we've got this one, what do you think? But yeah, I don't want to be overly bureaucratic and not miss supporting really good initiatives as well. Happy to continue to do that, circulate them round, but maybe there's some things we haven't thought of that we need to consider. Councillor Laws.
I just want to seek information.
Okay, thank you. Brilliant. Anyone want to ask anything about the report other than that? It's pretty straightforward, probably. Councillor Callaghan.
Just one question on that. When they arrive, are you just forwarding them straight on, or will they be considered by staff first and you'll be forwarding on them and
That's a good
staff
point.
decision?
Yeah, so we could add that in, couldn't we?
Well, no, you're going to implement policy. First of all, you've got to get policy. So that's what we're moving today.
Yep, that we have a policy that we're going to do that, but yeah, Councillor Callaghan says that we should then run it past the staff to ensure before we send it out. Is that right?
Oh, that was just my question. What was the intent that the staff will have considered and provided input first?
Yeah.
Or are we?
Yeah, obviously.
Will that request be
that would
for
be
councillor support prior to that then being considered by staff?
Right, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it would make a lot of sense for it usually comes through staff anyway. But yeah, we need to have input from staff for sure, whether we need to record that or not.
Could I just ask you a question? What's the magnitude we're talking about in terms of some of these applications?
They're infrequent.
Yeah.
But often they can come at short notice, which is not a reason, and sometimes there's good reasons why, and other times you could say that maybe they could have been a bit more organised. So we're trying to develop a process that means we're not scrambling all the time with creating a huge number of emails to get everyone to sign up. We had one recently that Alexa circulated, which was a good proposal from Waiwana Commander at Southern Lake Central. That's a good example where what they were seeking external funding for was consistent with our policies of the council, which is environmental permanent. I think if we can get a policy in place, then we can assess those requests for support. And the key thing is here is they're not requests for funding. They have to come to this table. These are where they're looking for a letter to support an application from a third-party agency. And so we're actually looking for a policy that enables an assessment, which I would think would be quickly undertaken by staff, and then a recommendation through to the chair. And then the chair would have discretion to say, well, yes, that's consistent with our policy, so we'll provide a letter of support. Or if there's questions, may still choose to bring it to the table to get some further thought of council. We're just trying to, I guess, reduce the amount of information that either has to come to council or is filling up emails. And this would seem to me to be one that, using that example of Alexa's, a good one, where if we have a policy that this table has signed off, then staff can apply that with the chair.
No, that's fairly obviously beneficial. If they were, debatable, then we'd bring them to the table to be considered, obviously.
A lot easier. Instead of the word implements, just drafts.
Or adopts.
No. We don't have a policy yet. So that's what I'm saying. Go and draft it, bring it here, get it signed off, off we go. And then there's no confusion at all, and we're all on the same page and blah, blah, blah. We can't implement what we don't have.
As per the requirements listed in A to E above, which are requirements, policy type ones. if we were going to draft a policy. Yeah, that already guides them.
I see it as very, very similar to our policy for external funding, consent funding support, which the general manager, so Gentleman, has a delegation to sign off against the policy that council has approved previously. So we've got a template, and we can take that
A to E,
put it into a
exactly.
policy document.
That's
Bring
right.
it back and get it stamped.
Spot on.
And
Yep.
then we've got what we need.
Yep.
Thanks. Okay, so you're happy
Yeah,
to
good idea.
move
Yeah.
drafting?
Yeah.
Yeah, and who seconded that? Someone
You will,
did?
it's your
Yeah.
policy.
Oh, councillor
Okay.
Summerall's doing that.
Oh,
That's
good
good.
God, some evils at hand again.
Yep,
That's for noting the reforms bill.
yep, and noting the report, hopefully. Drafts a policy. To bring, I suppose you could put that to bring back to council at the end. Sorry.
You've got a note, coronation of His Majesty.
Yes.
We need to pass the motion first.
This is part of the report, I'm asking.
Oh.
the report.
Good point. Yes, we do. Exactly. Thank you. And so it is worthwhile that we note the coronation of His Majesty Charles III. And that will be happening on the 6th of May, which will be before the next council meeting. And then some areas around Otago, there are commemorative events going on around that. Including, I know of a tree planting in Dunedin that I'll be attending with the DCC. Yep.
Does that
So-
change Queen's birthday, the
Yes.
King's birthday?
Yes.
It does. Cool.
Thank you. So we've got to, oh, sorry, Councillor Scott, have you got a question?
Yeah, it was a question in relation to the previous discussion point. I apologise, but my question is, with the Eco Fund applications, we actually rank them. We actually determine whether we think they're of a good calibre or not. And I think all we're doing here is saying they support the existing priorities. I mean,
They're not
anything.
asking for our funding.
What's that, sorry?
It won't be, it's not our funding.
No, but what they're asking for is their good name. And so what this council can do to, is support everything that sort of comes along. It gets to a point where your mails are not bothered because we support everything. Whereas in my view, we should only support good applications. And I do wonder in your policy,
Yep.
whether you should consider that they have to be, I'm just not quite sure what the words are, but they have to be good applications, sound applications.
That's what we can discuss at the next meeting. I'm not going to-
Yep, no, that's good. We can consider that as part of the
Thank you.
policy. Yep, thanks.
Can I ask another question?
Yep,
There was a bit of a flip a week ago. I sent it to you all. It was broken as a result of getting official information, emails between, remember the one I sent you, I hope. Otherwise I said immediately go delete. And that is, it's the Mayoral Forum. So that's what I'm talking about. Councillor Jim O'Malley from the Dunedin City Council publicly stated that essentially, he didn't use these words,
I
but
think
just
we should actually refrain from discussing another council when they're not here and it's not our.
no, this is to do with you. No, this is to do with you, and that's why I'm asking it. Because I need a clarification on this. And then because it's now a matter of public record, and because it potentially relates to the Otago Regional Council. Councillor Joe O'Malley made some public statements that were picked up, and publicly it has been reported that two of the mayors, Brian from Clutha and Tim from Central Otago, took issue with that and sent emails of complaint about a councillor expressing a view that they took to be criticism of their council. You'd be aware of it. Now, I want some assurance, given that this is the Mayoral Forum and in a public Mayoral Forum setting, that if a councillor around this table were to, by Jim O'Malley, criticise another council in their capacity for a council for not performing or performing inadequately a particular role, as they saw it, that our chair won't hold that person to account in the same way that the mayors of Clutha and Central Otago wish to hold councillor Melly to account and for some sort of apology or retraction to be made. I think one of the things that we most safeguard around this council is the idea that we are all 12 individuals elected by our constituents to represent them faithfully and fearlessly, and that we all have freedom of speech. So I just want to make sure, because what that seemed to do, that public exchange, is suggest that there was some sort of movement and operation of which you would be a part, Richard, as chair of the Otago Regional Council, and as an individual, but as the chair. And the mayors of Dunedin, Central Otago, and Clutha as well. That no criticism of any other council by any elected member was possible or was accepted, because that's just not the way we did things. I just wanted to make sure that we still have that freedom of speech around this table, and that exchange, which has now made its way into a public forum, would not be repeated around our forum.
So yeah, I can't speak on behalf of other councils and or actually individuals from other councils. That's their private responsibility. But I can say that this council didn't take a stance on that matter. Yep, and I believe though that is a matter of natural justice when you mention individuals, that individual should have a right to be able to answer to something. So yeah, that's my personal view. But no, we didn't take a stance on that particular matter.
Okay, thank you. Because it's been a matter of public record now, I just wanted to clarify that there wasn't some sort of understanding that we.
No, we haven't got an understanding on that one. Our council's not involved in it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Yep. Okay, and yeah, sorry, I think someone did. Councillor Callaghan.
I just had a quick second question. Are you willing or open to a question regarding the Harbour Master boat trip that we went on?
Oh, you were there. You're welcome to say something about it too if you want.
Yes, well, thank you. That was what I was going to ask, because on that trip, it was a really informative trip. I really enjoyed it. It was great to get out on the harbour. I was really interested in learning about, okay, we're building a great big new building, and it is almost smack in the middle of Dunedin, not that far from the boat ramp. And we have a building that we all went to, and we looked at the boat there, and then we sat and chatted while the boat went away, and it took a reasonable while. Councillor Noon asked an awful lot of questions at that time and seemed to hold us up a lot or whatever, but either way, it took quite a while for the boat to get into the water. And then we waited for an insanely lengthy length of time again for your chair to arrive. Boat ramp was in.
Yeah.
I suppose what I started as we were going up the harbour, I started asking Steve questions, and I want to emphasise that none of what he said was him saying to me. It was me asking the leading questions, like, is this efficient? Like, we're building great big new buildings, got 5,000 square meters of space underneath it. Why isn't everything you have here housed there? And it is too far, he says. It is too, cannot mobilize quick enough to get into the harbour. And then so I was looking at the boat ramp, and there was nobody there that day, and it still took quite a lot of time. The Coast Guard have a permanently moored their boat is in the water, ready to go. But if that boat ramp was full, if it was a Saturday and we were having to respond quickly, and there was a whole heap of people ahead, it would take forever to get onto the water and away. And often we are a first responder. So I started saying to Steve, well, what would be ideal? And I then suggested, well, we currently have harbour front land, and would ideal be a purposely built building for the harbour master with a purposely built slipway and storage for the boat on the water. Would that make us a better first responder to issues? I know you're scoffing, Councillor Scott.
No, I'm not scoffing, but it's just.
I think the building project's getting bigger. I apologise if it was scoffing, but I just could see that the tens of millions getting another one.
Yeah, but we are providing a service, and that is a regulatory service. And we seem to be like, we're in a rented building that we could be out of depending on the terms of the lease. Could we find another building either closer that would still mean, is it going to be an hour for us to mobilise? Is it 2 hours? If we have an oil spill on the harbour, we're trying to get there quickly. We've got a lot of gear to move. We have waterfront land at the moment that we could be, we have an opportunity if there was a will either through the court or across council, as to consider it now, we won't have it when we sell it. So it was just raising, I put the suggestions to Steve. Steve said that would be ideal.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Saunders?
So Scott.
I'm not, well, and a little, because I just imagine Steve.
Yeah.
No, so I'll a few things, and Gary, acknowledging you're right in terms of we are often a first responder for a number of instances, whether it be oil spill or safety issues on the harbour. I think one thing I would reflect on is that location for them holds more than just in terms of it's proven to be quite a successful location for them. It's close enough to the boat ramp. They haven't had an instance where they haven't been able to deploy quickly. They don't always deploy to the harbour. So obviously they're responsible for the entire Otago coast, and Tidy Mouth is one that they do deploy to reasonably frequently, and they're also up at the Karatane bar quite often as well. So I think that in terms of, is it the absolute best facility that we could provide the harbour master function? No, you could always provide them a more gold-plated function. Is it suitable for their needs at the moment? I think it is. And in saying that, it would always be something we would look at because it is a lease building, and our property team ensure that there is an arrangement in place that gives us confidence we can continue to provide our level of service. But I think given the financial challenges that we've faced through the annual plan and others, I think that is a suitable level of service for Steve and the team. It gives them the storage capability for the oil spill response and all the harbour master, as you would have seen when you were down there. They can deploy quickly. If the boat ramp was full, Steve would pull rank and would be the first person on the water, and he would be very good at that. I'm not as concerned about any potential hold up to deployment. Him and Pete both actually live a reasonable distance anyway, and so there's some time to be taken, and that's understood. We're not emergency responders like the Coast Guard are, but we do respond quickly, and we have done. But again, I think all things taken into account, where they are is suitable, and we would just continue to have a look at that in terms of the property arrangement we hold with the landlord.
Thank you. Good question. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to move over in a second. I'm going to put that all in favour. Aye, against, carried. So yeah, report.
Yes, so I've kept my report quite short. You can read it, and I'm happy to take any questions on it.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, paragraph 8, the last line where it says, now that the funnel's design has been finalised, any cost overruns will sit with the port, not ORC. What about cost underruns? Will they sit with the port, not the ORC? How does that?
Oh no, they'll we will benefit from underruns. I'll check with Nick in a second, but so yeah, look, my understanding is lease is 6% up to a maximum. Am I right, Nick?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yep, thank you.
And then there's the portion that we're funding ourselves, which thankfully we can get covered under on that part of it.
Cool. Thank you. Anyone else? Recommendation to note, somebody, yep, Councillor Wilson, seconding Councillor Weir, all in favour, against, carried. Okay, move that we go into public excluded for the reasons stated. Is there a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Noon, Councillor Laws.
The 5 issues that we've raised this issue before, but 5 issues on which we intend to go into confidence over. 2 minutes. The median wage uplift for bus drivers issue. The appointment of EB representatives committees, and the on-lending agreement variation to do with the Port of Otago and the Otago Regional Council getting access to loan facilities. I understand you discussed these matters in confidence last time, so they come up in the on-confidence part now. can I suggest to you that on the basis of what is here, that these items can be publicly released? And that we do not need to go into confidence to discuss them?
Just that. So can I answer this?
Yes, sure.
Sure. So my understanding my understanding is we have a process where the chief executive releases any in confidence information when he or she believes that it's appropriate and safe to do so. And I don't think I need a motion from council to do that, because I think I've got that right already, but I think we did do it anyway last time. So in terms of the increase in bus driver wages, which was agreed by council at the last meeting, I did share that with the public, and it's become public information now. In terms of the LGFA funding, we borrowed some of that money for the port, didn't we, Nick? Your view was that we generally do this commercially, but I don't think I've released that yet, have I?
There was a press release that went out following that saying that we've done that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it has really been
part of the whole, part of the whole Burrow Marine program. So we've already announced that we were providing that funding. It was in public excluded because that the actual, the actual lending agreement itself in there.
And you told me that we'd always, lending agreements such as that, commercial lending agreements in the past, we've always treated as public excluded.
Yeah, and it had the legal advice attached.
So that's been released.
The minutes themselves, there's the minutes themselves now are, if you as chief executive wanted to release them, there's nothing
I could release
commercially sensitive in the minutes themselves. It's just we wouldn't be releasing the original agenda with the agreement.
Okay, well, generally I haven't released minutes until the following meeting when the council would release. The minutes belong to the council.
I understand.
And the third item, which was the iwi appointments process, we ended up hitting a snag, I have to say. And as,
Process is ongoing.
and as a result of that, the process is ongoing, as the chair just mentioned. So in some ways, it was fortuitous that wasn't discussed in a publicly open meeting.
Okay, so that's fair enough, but this one, that's ongoing and there's a matter of privacy concern for actual persons. Understand the sensitivity. But I was just wondering the rationale of keeping those minutes for publicly notified decisions, whether the lending one or the bus driver one. We're going into committee now. I just don't understand that to go in to confirm these minutes.
We need to consider all as a block. Apparently, we can't separate them out. Well,
One of these are
according
different
to our governance advice, we actually can't, but we can release them afterwards. So if there's certain matters that that still need to be confidential, which it sounds like one of them at least does need to be. All the minutes need to be considered in confidence, apparently, and then afterwards we can release what we want, what we've already done to an extent.
So normally, Michael, as I understand it, in the time I've been here, the publicly excluded minutes don't get released publicly until they're approved and the council has allowed for them to be released publicly. And if Gretchen's explaining that the minutes are a complete set of minutes, then we wouldn't release those publicly until we were happy that every part of the minute was.
No, we can release if we chose to, and you can, because you've got delegated authority as you've just explained, and you've already released some
Components of the
things.
minutes,
Yeah, components, exactly.
So I can release by component, but would I
But we
release?
need to go into public excluded if we've got any matters that are still public excluded in the minutes, which we don't. Yeah.
And I haven't released minutes publicly. I have to admit this because I didn't realise that I had that delegation. I've had the delegation to release information that was decided at a publicly excluded meeting. But I have always felt that if it was a publicly excluded minute, the minute has to be approved by council to determine it was an accurate, true and accurate record. So I'm not in the process of releasing minutes until they've been approved. And then the chair would give me delegation to release it and to take it out of public excluded. I would have thought.
Yeah, we can do that. Public excluded.
It does seem a slow
Yes, we
process,
want.
so Michael, I accept that.
And then the second motion though is for is for the audit and risk stuff. Is down here as well.
For today.
The audit and risk recommendations of the 23rd of March Audit and Risk Subcommittee for confidential.
Yeah.
There are two items that are actions from there. One relates to proposed land and water plans. Time.
This is the actions register, audit and risk. is the
Okay.
third matter.
Okay, well then, where's, I don't have those papers. They're not in my confidential agenda that I've been sent.
Yeah.
This last one, audit and risk, recommends the council direct, yeah. Why on earth would we keep that public? Private, confidential? I mean, seriously,
I think that one probably could be discussed in public itself.
gee,
So is somebody going to help me as to why they were chosen to be in public excluded? Because I don't remember.
Because it was a public
Yeah,
excluded.
So the meeting was
press
held
meeting.
public excluded, so the normal process would be that when the minutes are approved, it's done in a public excluded meeting. The decision, as I understand it, from the email we got from Liz, is there could be a decision made now to take that part in public. And you can do that. The first one, as explained, has still got a component of the minutes that has a reason to be publicly excluded. So the minutes need to be confirmed in a public excluded meeting, and then at the appropriate time, the whole thing can be released. But the second one, it's in here as public excluded because that's the process we operate, but there is still a decision to be made about whether you choose to do it in public excluded today or not.
but if the chair and the chief executive have the delegated authority or the authority to take things out of confidence into confidence, then that also would relate, you would think, to a motion that was passed at an audit subcommittee as to whether or not it'd be notified. Listen, I think, I don't want to get, I'm not going to die in a ditch. You're saying I'm going to die in a ditch on this one, sorry. But I don't want you to get head up about it. And I understand you have a process, and I'm not criticizing any individual at all. But I think there needs to be a much more robust system before we keep putting stuff in confidence. It shouldn't go into confidence unless it is serious. And none of these things, with the possible exception of the appointment of an iwi representative, are. That's all I'm saying.
They were held in confidence, so they've come in confidence to be approved. So I think there is, I mean, this council does do a serious process as to why they are there. And it's gone through the usual serious process where staff have put it on the agenda because it was held in public excluded. All of these matters, so therefore they would, but yes, we can make the decision to discuss some of them in public, if that makes sense, and we've done that as a council before.
Yes, but you've just admitted that there's no reason that one of those is in confidence at all, really, and that is the audit manager.
Well, it was discussed in a public excluded meeting, so that's why they can't just sort of decide that it's going to now be discussed in public. That's for us to decide.
All right, I'll leave.
Yeah. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I can't hear any right comments. I was hearing there one meeting at the time, or the rest of the time. And we were we did move into confidence, but that was recommended in the agenda.
Yes.
So, I mean, it has followed through that process, but I agree wholeheartedly with Michael about moving into confidence. We need to be conscious of the moving into confidence.
Yes.
Councillor Wilson. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Minutes are attached to the diligent, and I'm just wondering if that matter, if we can pursue it, because I can't see them attached to. I agree with you that they're not attached, and I can't find them on our diligent. But has anyone else seen them?
Yeah.
The audit and risk.
They are there on mine.
The other one.
Yeah, the other one is, but the audit and risk isn't. So we can't actually pursue it anyway.
It's just a resolution.
Yeah.
It's not a minute. So it's considering the recommendation. It's not considering the minutes.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So it's got a table there that's very small that says what. So anyway, we are not discussing the matter, but it is there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is an order to do it in.
Yep. Okay. So we had a mover and a seconder to go into public excluded, then we had some other discussion.
Well, I'd like to move, if I can, I'm sorry, that all bar the minutes of item 3.2, which is the iwi representative appointment, that discussions, those be approved in public. Discussed in public. Sorry? Oh, okay. So I'd have to vote against it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've talked about that one. Okay, so I'll put the motion then, all in favour? Aye. Against?
No.
Carried. Thank you. Good discussion. So